wipe that stupid smile across your face. It's comedy time, and the gang's all here, the girls, the
Rob,
boys.
it says here he's in Zug. Is that a place, Rob? Zug?
It is indeed. It's
Fantastic.
a town in Switzerland.
I want to go to Zug. What would you like to say?
Well, thanks for taking me. First time I've ever actually called in, and having listened to you over the last couple of hours, you're definitely not an anti-Semite.
No.
But the question you're posing to most would be one of democracy, humanity, and it is abhorrent that so many individuals are killed. Fundamentally, Israel is a democratic state, whether you like Bibi or not, or whether you like Zivi or the extreme right wing, and I don't believe they'll be lasting very long. And Bibi has got his worst poll ratings ever, so it's only a matter of time. War hasn't helped him at all. But fundamentally, it is a existential crisis for Israel. They are a country of 9-10 million people. And as a government, you have a responsibility to protect your population. So when you have a terrorist state on your borders whose only goal is to, one, have an Islamic state and to overthrow the state of Israel and to expel all 9 million Jews who live there, I don't think it's 9, I think it's 7 million Jews and 2 million others, you have no choice. You have a moral and legal obligation to your population. And 20,000...
But that would have been true before October the 7th, wouldn't it?
It's very true.
Yeah.
And I think Israel is
no one would have argued it before October. No one would have said we have a moral obligation to... I think you're saying to wipe out Gaza.
What I'm saying is they have a moral obligation to protect their citizens.
Yeah, but by doing what, Rob? Let's not be disingenuous. By doing what?
If the consequence of that is that there is the destruction of Gaza, however horrible it is, that is their legal and moral obligation.
Well, I'm grateful for you for saying it out loud, but that's, of course, if we swap the words around, that's what Hamas believe about Israel.
Correct.
So you're putting yourself in exactly the same moral space as them.
I'll tell you why not. Because Israel wasn't throwing rockets onto Gaza. Israel wasn't. Israel is. It
was enclosed. Well, no, I won't, because you've made one point, and I'll make one, and then you can make another one. They're enclosing the Palestinian people in what has been described by the head of the United Nations as the largest open prison in the world.
Which is, if all the statistics, Monaco is more densely populated than Gaza.
Yeah, but if I live in Monaco, I can hop on a plane and go wherever I want in the world.
It wasn't enclosed when there was a democratically elected state.
Yeah, but it is now.
There.
It is now.
And then
I could go back and point to the period in history when there weren't rockets being fired at Israel. This is a silly conversational gambit.
No. When Hamas threatened. When Hamas took over and killed the Fatah and the non-Hamas individuals and threatened to kill all those Jews, that Israel doesn't have an obligation to open its borders to any country. No country sovereign has an obligation.
But you're supposed to be telling me why calling for the complete eradication of Gaza is different morally from calling for the complete eradication of Israel.
Because Israel isn't looking to eradicate Gaza because
you just told me it was. You just told me it had a moral obligation to do so.
No, it has a moral obligation to defend itself. It doesn't have a moral obligation to attack.
And the Hamas position is that we need to repel occupation.
But you cannot call a sovereign nation cutting off its borders. But by the way, thousands and thousands of Gazans worked in Israel every day. So you cannot say that the border was closed. Hamas decided...
I can, because it was.
No, its border wasn't. Its border to Egypt was open. Its border to Israel was open.
Yes, but now it's closed. So it has been closed. But again, I'll just remind you, you're supposed to be telling me why there's a moral difference for you to say Gaza must be eradicated and for a Hamas terrorist to say Israel must be eradicated.
Because one is a democratically elected state looking to defend its people.
But no one's been elected on a mandate to eradicate Gaza.
It's been elected as a mandate to defend its people. Hamas is
but
not.
you're here
Hamas
to
is
defend.
not
You're here to defend the opinion that Gaza should be eradicated, and I'm here to ask you how that makes you any different from someone calling for Israel to be eradicated.
Hamas is not looking to defend its people. Hamas's sole stated goal is the eradication of the Jews and the liberation of its called.
And your sole stated goal in the course of this conversation is the eradication of Gaza in order to defend Israel.
It's not a. It's not a
what
goal.
Is it then?
It's not a unilateral goal.
What is it then?
It's a consequence.
Oh, okay.
Actions have consequences.
Well, exactly, and the Hamas argument would be that Israel's actions have consequences, whether it's the Nakba of 1948 or whether it's the more recent occupation.
Correct. There are consequences.
So you are the
to
same.
Actions. No, you cannot put a moral.
Give me in a sentence then the big difference between you calling for the eradication of Gaza and a Hamas scumbag calling for the eradication of Israel.
I'm not calling for it. I'm not calling for the eradication.
You called it a moral
of Gaza.
obligation.
As a government, you have a moral
obligation. You called
obligation.
it a moral obligation. Nobody's making that case, not even the government. You're here making that case now, and I have heard people making the case for the eradication of Israel. And to me, sitting in London on the 4th of January 2024, you sound to me exactly the same.
Well, I think your interpretation of what is a democratic elected sovereign state...
Why do you keep saying that? Because there's no democratic mandate for the eradication of Gaza. So why do you keep referring to something utterly meaningless?
It's not meaningless.
Of course it's meaningless. If a government was elected on a platform to eradicate Gaza, you'd have half a point, but it isn't, so you don't.
So the government was elected not to eradicate Gaza, but to defend its people.
But it has a moral obligation to eradicate Gaza.
It was attacked on October the 7th, and in doing so...
Yes, but we both agreed that your point would stand before October the 7th.
So can Israel allow itself to be attacked time and time again? Can any sovereign nation allow itself to be attacked time and time again?
Well, they have done throughout history. The United Kingdom did. It negotiated with the IRA. The peace process in Northern Ireland was a consequence of compromise and conversation. They didn't send the British Army into Ulster or Derry or Belfast and blow up every Catholic house in the territory, did they? So again, because we're going to run out of time.
Have you ever been threatened by rockets?
Well, have you ever had a lollipop? I mean, these are pointless. These are pointless questions. You're here to tell me what the difference is between this scumbag here calling for the eradication of Israel and you calling for the eradication of Gaza. We've not found anything yet.
Yes, we have.
We haven't, because you keep saying Israel's a sovereign state with a democratically elected government, but that doesn't change the meaning of the words that you use.
Have its stated cause to destroy another country. And Hamas's stated cause...
It doesn't have a stated cause, Rob. It has a moral obligation and the military capability. And that only applies to one side in this argument. Hamas doesn't have the military capability to destroy Israel, but Israel has the military capability to destroy Gaza.
So what should Israelis do?
Well, a two-state solution.
But Gaza doesn't want it. Hamas don't want a two-state solution.
Then get rid of Hamas without killing a million civilians.
And how do you do that?
I'd treat the pursuit of Hamas terrorists with the same regard for civilian life in Gaza that you would if they were hiding in Israel.
Okay, so you have 20,000 deaths according to Hamas, of which apparently 10,000 are actual Hamas terrorists.
I've answered your question, Rob.
And according to the British generals,
I've answered your question, Rob.
Israel is the most ethical armies and militaries.
I've answered your question, Rob.
You haven't, because you don't live in reality.
Oh, okay. And the reality is, well, so how many...
It's existential.
Okay, final question.
To a government.
Final question. How many dead Palestinians is too many in pursuit of this goal?
One. All dead is wrong. All dead is wrong.
Okay, so what's the number at which you say stop killing them?
You can't put a number on it.
I can.
You can't as a government.
Okay. You're not a government.
You can't as a government.
You're not a government.
So
how many is too many for you?
So at the moment you have 250,000 Israelis who can't live in their homes.
I've answered your question, Rob. I've answered your question. Why can't you answer mine?
Because as a government...
You're not a government.
It could be millions.
You're not a government. Okay.
It could be millions.
There we are. And that would be acceptable in pursuit of the defence of Israel.
Potentially, yes, as an existential threat.
I'm grateful for your honesty.
Yeah, the same way a million Afghans have been kicked out of Pakistan.
It's not the same way at all. But you keep clinging to these ludicrous
Okay. We're not at millions.
How is kicking a million Afghans out of Pakistan the same as killing a million Palestinians?
because fundamentally there are deaths involved. People keep talking about ethnic cleansing.
No,
genocide.
Rob. How is kicking 1 million Afghans out of Pakistan the same as killing 1 million Palestinians? Because you just said it was.
It was a stupid comment of mine.
Well, finally, something we can agree on. Alex is in Hendon. Alex, what would you like to say?
Morning, James. I'm a first-time caller, so a little nervous, but I'll try and put it across as eloquently as possible. First of all, I want to start by condemning all of the name-calling. I am Jewish, I'm a strong Zionist, but name-calling is foul and just should
unless
not
it's
have
accurate. I'm a big fan of name-calling when it's accurate, Alex. I think we can all agree on that.
Calling someone a pig, I'm not sure if that's particularly accurate or should be present. I wanted to say, really, that Israel is a democracy. Currently, there is a national unity government, which has parties from across the political spectrum in Israel. And Tzipi Hotovely was an ambassador who has a right-wing history and past on political positions. Do I think that she represents the current government of Israel, given that it is a national unity government? No.
You can't do this, Alex. I mean, it is literally, the appointment literally involves being the Israeli government's representative in London. That's the actual job description. You can't, however much you might balk at what she said, you can't ring in and say, well, I don't think she represents the government that appointed her to represent the government that appointed her. You just can't. You must see that.
So what I believe, and it's a bit of a theory, is that she is preparing for a political campaign. But
we can't move on from the first thing that you said yet, I'm afraid. You cannot say, because the only way you can cling to the notion that this isn't as repellent as it is by persuading yourself that she doesn't speak for the government. But if the government's ambassador doesn't speak for the government, then who the hell does, Alex?
Okay, so the previous ambassador to the UK from Israel was Mark Regev, and he's now, I believe, a senior spokesman for the Israeli state. And I think that he does a much better service to the Israeli government in terms of representing the beliefs and the...
Because he doesn't say out loud the things that Tzipi Hotovely says out loud.
No, I don't believe it's that he's not saying it. I think that he has a much greater understanding. I think that Tzipi Hotovely does a disservice to a lot of the Jewish and Israeli people in the UK.
She's the ambassador,
because her rhetoric... I know. And
she's the ambassador. We've got far-right members of the government. You'll know more about this than I do, but you've got Itamar Ben-Gvir, you've got Bezalel Smotrich. They are members of the government, and they go further than Tzipi Hotovely does. So you can't say they don't speak for the government. You just can't. They're in it. That's like saying Jeremy Hunt doesn't speak for the government of the United Kingdom.
Well, I can say that she doesn't represent all of the figures within the government, because we have a national unity government now.
Okay, we're not going to make any progress here. Let's look at her words then, and let's look at the question of whether she is. I mean, she is, isn't she? She is essentially justifying the destruction of the whole of Gaza.
She has used inflammatory rhetoric.
Well, tell me what the rhetoric means. What does the rhetoric mean?
I believe it means that she'll take very strong action, or she believes that the state of Israel should take very strong actions.
Listen to this clip. Listen to this clip, and then tell me what you think she is saying.
Okay.
Well, I'm afraid that the result is that Hamas was the one who destroyed the future of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, and it's a shame. You cannot understand that this terror organization basically destroyed the Gaza Strip.
So just focus on the word destroyed, or the words destroyed the Gaza Strip. What do you think she's saying?
So the Gaza Strip, if you look pre-2005, was not in the state that it is.
People are listening. We're talking about post-October 7th. What is she saying?
Okay, but with regard to the words that she just said about the Palestinians destroyed the Gaza Strip, I wouldn't say the Palestinians.
No, but the words we're focusing on are destroyed the Gaza Strip. What is she saying?
Okay, so I believe she's saying, and I'm not her, so I can't really speak for exactly what she said.
Yes,
but what I believe,
we know what the word destroyed means. We know what the words Gaza Strip means. We put them together, and what do we get?
Okay, so what I believe she's saying, James, is that in 2005, 2006, both years, when the Gaza Strip was handed over to Palestinian Authority control. So that not the Palestinian Authority that we know today, but Hamas.
Just so you know, I'm not going to interrupt you again, but I'm going to play it again when you finish speaking, so we can compare what she's actually said with what you're saying now. Okay,
no problems. So Hamas took over control of the Gaza Strip, and they have been governing it, if you can call that governance, for the last 17 years or so. And Gaza beforehand was not in the state that it is today. There was civil life. There were Jews, Arabs, Muslims, Christians, all living within the Gaza Strip. And whilst it was, in a sense, I'm sure, a melting pot of different cultures and different groups within the society, it wasn't in the position that it is in today. As soon as Hamas,
when you say the position it is in today, unless I'm misunderstanding you, you're not talking about the destruction of huge swathes of the territory. You're talking about governance.
I'll come to that.
Well, you won't, because we're going to run out of time, and I am going to play the clip again. But you think that she's talking about the poor governance that Hamas has brought in prior to the...
describe it more strongly than poor governments using international aid.
So then what about this bit then?
Well, I'm afraid that the result is that Hamas was the one who destroyed the future of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, and it's a shame. You cannot understand that this...
And this one?
One of the things we realized that every school, every mosque, every second house has an access to tunnel. So this is, and of course ammunition.
But that's an argument for destroying the whole of Gaza, every single building in it.
So do you have
I think Ian's
solution?
done a better job than me there. So Ian is saying this is an argument for destroying every building in Gaza, and you're saying no, it isn't.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Quite possibly that's what she...
Why do you have to say quite possibly? What else could she possibly be saying? Why the reluctance, Alex? Just genuinely, in your own words, why are you so reluctant to say what is so obvious?
Because as someone who has visited Israel, who's been to Kfar Aza, who's even been to places like Ramallah and spoken to Fatah officials, I'd like to have an idea that I have a well-rounded knowledge of the conflict, of the situation.
So why are you so reluctant to say what is so obvious? She couldn't have been any clearer. She didn't even deny it. Ian Dale says that would involve the complete destruction of Gaza, and she essentially goes, "Yep." Why do you struggle to just describe what everyone else is listening to?
Well, look, I think she is highly inflammatory and in some cases extreme individual. And possibly that is what she's saying.
But why the possibly? Why can't you just say she's clearly calling, or at least justifying, the putative destruction of the entire territory? Because she just is, mate.
Well, I wouldn't say the entire territory. I think that
every school, every hospital, every home. What would that leave?
If that is indeed what she's calling for,
well, let's listen to it again. Then let's listen to that first clip again.
Every school, every mosque, every second house has an access to tunnel. So this is, and of course ammunition.
But that's an argument for destroying the whole of Gaza.
So what else could she possibly be saying?
I believe she is saying something very extreme, and
she's the ambassador. She's the ambassador for the Israeli government, a government that contains Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, who've gone even further than her.
Yeah, that's very true. But the good thing about Israel is it is a democracy, and I'd like to think, and protests in Israel will perhaps demonstrate this, is that at the next election we won't be seeing more of Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, because they again do a disservice to peace in the Middle East and to Jews and Israelis in the diaspora as well, because every time that something inflammatory like this is said, it is Jews and Israelis on the street that actually feel the pinch, because there's been a remarkable increase in anti-Semitism.
I join you in that hope, but obviously I have to remind you began by saying that for Zippy Hotovely, she thinks that this is an effective way of launching a political career back in Israel, which
she believes so.
Yes, which sucks some of the optimism out of our shared hope that this kind of politics will be on the wane in Israel at the next election, doesn't it?
Well, at the same time, you look at Reform UK over here, and they believe that they're going to have a strong chance of doing well in this next election.
Oh, there's a twist I wasn't expecting, Alex.
So everyone really believes that they can do very well. You wouldn't really launch. Well,
they say there's a difference between truly believing and of course saying out loud that you can do very well. But fair play for taking me by surprise at the end there with that parallel. Alex, take care and thank you for your thoughtful contribution. Jason is in Marylebone. Jason, what would you like to say?
I'd like to say that I just feel that your original question was why do we think this is happening with the difference between Prince Andrew and Prince Harry?
We call him Andrew Windsor on this programme.
Sorry, Andrew okay. Windsor. So I was calling him Andy. And I think from my point of view, I think it's because Prince Harry, for every time he writes a book, every time he does an interview...
He's only written one book.
But he's often in the media recently, and a lot of the time he's in the media it's because of what he's doing whilst he's in California. So if you bring yourself to that forefront, you're then going to set yourself up for the abuse that he's been getting recently if people don't agree with him.
Well, hang on a minute, mate. His brother and his wife are in the papers all the time. They get reported for cutting ribbons.
But they're doing that as their duty. That's their duty, is what they are. Right. So they're not going to Netflix and they're not getting TV programs made about them. They haven't written a book about their life. They haven't.
That's all happened since he left the country. And the question is looking at the coverage that he received before he left the country, the coverage that led them to decide they couldn't live in the country. And just to pick up on that, I mean, having pointed out the flaw in your theory, I'm still interested in how you arrived at it. Why would you have you personally have a problem with anybody, but them in particular, writing a book or signing a deal with Netflix?
I have absolutely no problem with it whatsoever.
Well, then what are you doing on the radio then, Jason?
I'm trying to answer your question.
But you can't theorise about what other people are thinking. I need to speak to people who've actually got a problem with him writing a book or signing that. I mean, okay, well, you explain to me why anyone would have a problem. I wrote a book this year. I try not to mention it on the radio too much, but it's done all right. It was in fact in the Waterstones Piccadilly window. It was right next to Prince Harry's book, which I found quite touching. So why shouldn't he write it? Why do you think some people think he shouldn't be writing books?
But that's just pure ignorance that people should think he shouldn't write a book. Of course he can write a book. You've written a book. I've written a book. But when I wrote my own book, I then knew that I was putting myself up in the shop window to potentially be criticised because I went out publicly with a book. And that's exactly what Prince Harry did. Andrew Windsor stands accused
of sexually abusing young girls. I mean, in a way, you're kind of proving my point for me. So the question is, how come the bloke mired in lurid allegations of sex abuse gets an easy ride from the British media? And to use your explanation, the bloke who wrote a book gets a kicking. Do you see how mad that is?
Yeah, because Andrew's kept a low profile. He's kept out of the way. He's kept out of the media. And he's basically stayed out of the way. If he'd have written a book...
He gave millions of pounds to a young woman who accused him of raping her. How is that keeping a low profile?
Because they did that to hush the whole situation.
No, you see, what you've accidentally done, and I say this with love, you've proved my point. You've not challenged it or explained it. So really what you've demonstrated is that the bloke mired in lurid sex allegations has, from your perspective, had a lower media profile than the bloke who's made a couple of documentaries and written a book. Now, who made that decision, Jason? Andrew and Harry or the media?
Well, obviously it's the media, but
so how can you blame Harry for the fact that they write about him more than they write about his disgraced uncle?
Because if Harry had have gone to California and just...
So you're trying to have your cake and eat it. You are talking about your own opinions.
Hang on a minute, but you're not giving me a chance to actually say what I'm trying.
Yeah, of course I am. I'm just pointing out for people listening that we know you do believe this stuff, even though you're pretending that you don't. You have got a problem with Harry.
Why have I got a problem with Harry?
Good, because of the way you're talking.
I'm upset that Harry left the country. I'm upset that it didn't pan out because I think when Harry met Meghan, I think it was a great love story, and I thought the media handled it superbly well, other than Danny Baker's ridiculous picture that he wrote when they had their baby. But I thought it all started off incredibly well.
You're joking, aren't you? She got accused of having flowers in her bouquet on her wedding day that might kill Princess Charlotte, and then it turned out that Kate Middleton had the same flowers in her bouquet.
But the story didn't start on their wedding day. It started when they first met each other.
Oh, you haven't read the book, have you?
No,
but you've just got strong opinions about why he shouldn't have written it. And listen, I say this, as I say, the fact that you think Andrew has kept a low profile while Harry has drawn lots of attention to himself is based upon, it's literally predicated upon the amount of newsprint that editors have decided to dedicate to them. So the question of why are editors attacking that bloke over there who's done nothing wrong while going relatively easy on that bloke over there who is accused of all sorts of things. I mean, kind of... Also, he did the Mateless interview, James. How can you say he's kept a low profile? Bless you. Bill's in Brentwood. Bill, what would you like to say?
Why am I not going to vote Tory again after all these years? Because they're epically useless. They've had a majority since 2016, 2017.
2010, mate.
No, that was with the Lib Dems when they've had an unqualified majority. Since,
no, fair enough. 2015 then, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the one. And on the two very big issues of that period, Brexit and COVID, they've done poorly, to say the least. On the two subsequent issues, less important issues, the economy and immigration, they've also failed. And on the economy, which is supposed to be their trademark thingy, well, to fail on that, how dismal is that when that's the thing you've been banging on for years about, that you're so good at running the economy?
Yeah.
So, yeah, hopeless. Even worse than John Major's government, which...
So can well, you voted for him as well. You didn't stop voting Tory after.
I did. I know. Yeah. But this is, I mean, that...
Has it ever crossed your mind?
John Major's government was awful, but even worse.
Yeah. Let's look at one element of this, and I don't want to make any presumption, so let me just clarify. I suspect that you want less immigration and a stronger economy.
I think less immigration would be a good idea, because I think principally immigration displaces the lower levels of English people, pushes them onto welfare, and that is not good for the social contract.
Okay. What if you can't have a stronger economy without high immigration? What do you do then?
Above my pay grade, Squire.
Well, it's not, is it? Because it's actually the basis of your voting intention. So you're drawn to one of these weird new parties that begins with R, are you, Bill?
Only with reluctant. R is for reluctant.
That'll do. I can't remember who's leading that one.
I would quite like to see the Conservatives get the Canadian 1995 treatment of going down from 165 to 2. Serve them right is all I would say.
But you see, your opinions are very strong. And yet the minute I point out the fairly well-established fact that you can't really have economic growth without relative... No, hang on.
No.
It really is. Economic growth without relatively high immigration, especially in a country with an ageing population and a low birth rate, is... I mean, it's actually impossible, but it doesn't make the tiniest dent in your certainty, does it? You just say it's below my pay grade. What if it's true?
Above. What if it's true? That's the question.
Yeah,
is it true?
is. That is the question.
You were talking a few minutes ago about think tanks. Those sort of arguments are put forward by the party pre-people, aren't they?
No, they're not. The think tanks I'm talking about, Bill, are the ones that don't reveal their funding and encourage people like you to believe that you can have economic growth without having relatively high immigration. And that had its apotheosis during Liz Truss's premiership, which I presume you were unhappy with.
Well, I thought she was a bit stupid.
Yes, but she holds the same opinions as you.
No, she doesn't, because you put opinions
She does. She wants economic growth and lower immigration. She categorically does hold the same opinions as you.
But I didn't say that. You asked me that question, but I didn't answer it. Had you been listening?
You did answer it. You gave me quite a long answer as to why you wanted lower immigration. You gave me all the Daily Mail lines about English people being on welfare. Well done for not using the word indigenous. But the relationship between economic growth, if you have fewer people earning, is an impossible relationship.
Depends how the cake is sliced.
No, it doesn't. That's a silly figure of speech, Bill. It depends how the cake is sliced.
But is that one of the arguments you're putting forward is the one the think tanks put forward themselves, because they're the ones who are going to be enriched by it. I mean,
Bill, you're literally the poster boy for the kind of think tanks I'm talking about. You believe in the impossible.
You keep telling me what I'm saying.
I just keep reminding you what you said when you rang in. You want a stronger economy and lower immigration. That's literally your reason for ringing in. You said the two things they failed on, didn't you, are the economy and immigration.
Well, then if you're saying the two things are joined at the hip...
Well, of course they are.
Why?
Why?
Why do you have? So do you have to? Have
Okay. Let me use the word workforce then. You see the intrinsic relationship between the workforce and the economy.
So your argument is, in essence, unless we have a perpetually growing population, we can never have economic growth. Is that the case? Now, please explain, therefore, why we had economic growth, let's say, for the sake of argument, between 1900 and, say, 1960, when we didn't have a vastly growing population. It might have been growing incrementally.
You can go back, if you want, to pre-war standards of living and pre-war distributions of wealth, but if you want to have a modern economy, either late 20th century or 21st century, then you have to have a growing workforce.
You would have a growing workforce if you didn't have 5 million people sitting on their backsides.
Okay, so you've fallen for that one as well. It's all the fault of people who aren't working. Do you know any?
No. It's not their fault at all.
Do you know any?
Yeah, I do.
Who? Tell me about the ones you know, because this is always interesting.
Well, I'm not working for a start.
Are you sitting on your backside?
No, I'm walking around the room.
Well, why aren't you? So you're the reason why the economy is poor, because you're not working.
That's possible.
Okay, Bill. Should we leave it here? It's been fun for me. I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Fun for me too. Great.
Yeah, but just to be clear, your opinions are exactly the same as they were when you rang in.
Well, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
no, that's great. And you're going to vote for one of these weird new parties beginning with R that you think is further to the right than the Tories, or at least more likely to deliver lower immigration and a stronger economy.
I'm not so sure about the stronger economy, but
hey, who cares anyway? As long as we can bring immigration down, eh?
Well, there you are. You said
I don't care if it makes me poorer. Did you vote for Brexit, Bill?
Well, again, this is the point.
It's a question, Bill, not a point. Did you?
Of course I did, because I don't mind about being poorer.
As long as there's fewer foreigners around. Am I right?
Oh, don't be dopey. Do you think look at the Scots Nats? They're quite happy to vote to be poorer for independence. No one criticises them.
No, they dispute completely the idea that they would be poorer, but now you know you are. You voted for a weaker economy in 2016, Bill.
We can vote for the national good rather than the personal good.
You voted for a weaker economy. That's not to the national good. So what we've done in the course of this phone call, we've gone from you saying that you're not going to vote Conservative because you want a stronger economy to saying that in 2016 you voted for a weaker economy and you think that was for the national good. That's all in the space of 6 minutes.
No, it's all because you're putting words in my mouth and not actually letting me say what I wanted to say.
Oh, go on then, say it now.
No, let's say goodbye.
No, say it now, quick. Don't go, quick, say it. Good Lord, quite nostalgic for the days when people like that rang in on a rather more regular basis. But to be fair to Bill, I suppose you can see why they don't. I want a stronger economy. What did you vote for in 2016? A weaker economy. Stop putting words in my mouth, mate. Have the floor. Say what you want. Click, click, brrr. Howard is in Billericay. Howard, what would you like to say?
First of all, I definitely like number 4, closely followed by number 3.
Yes, I think I'm the other way round, actually. Number 3, closely followed by... But on we go.
I'm a lifelong Tory voter. With a bit of regret now. I voted for Brexit.
Sure.
Not to do with the immigration. I suppose it was a sovereignty question for me. And with even more regret, I voted for Boris.
Yes.
I was
probably for the same reason, though. You still in 2019 thought that there was a nation improving Brexit that was deliverable, and he created, I think, very successfully the idea that he would be able to deliver it.
I think a lot of it was just, I just felt that the whole country, and especially Parliament, was in stalemate.
Yeah.
And just something needed to happen.
It was. That's the point everybody misses about 2019. It was another con-trick by Cummings and Johnson, but it was actually, unlike Brexit, it was built on the truth. The country was in a stalemate because the people who were determined to prevent the nation from going down a path of utterly unnecessary self-harm still had agency in Parliament, so he had to get rid of them in order to get it over. But anyway, we digress. Why now? What has dropped? What penny has dropped?
So I was quite hopeful when Rishi got in. I was really disappointed that Truss beat him in the first round.
Right.
Because I could see that for the disaster that it was. For a country that was jumping headfirst into high inflation, her answer seemed to be to throw more money at it, which no one seemed to get who had a vote to put her in. So when he got in, I was quite hopeful. I thought, he'll get a handle on the economy, and the economy is doing much better. Inflation's coming down.
But that's got nothing to do with him, has it, as you well know?
I suppose a bit of good timing helps in that respect. But everything else, the economy aside, it's just been a catalogue of errors. First and foremost is the Rwanda policy, and just about everything else. He was always going to have a good handle on the economy, or a good interpretation of what needs to be done. And what might help.
Listen, I've just done 2 rounds with Bill. I'm not going to have another ding dong on this, but I am drawn to the idea that you think Rishi Sunak's handling of the economy has been impressive. And you're familiar with the cost of living and interest rates, are you, Howard?
Very, yeah very.
So talk me through how they're good at the moment.
Well, no, I didn't say they were good. I said they were getting better.
Oh, okay.
And all this takes, so inflation is coming down.
Yes,
that
but that's gravity.
Help the man in the supermarket.
That's essentially gravity, isn't it? And indeed, the reduction in energy costs caused by the recalibration of the sort of post-Ukraine energy markets. It's got absolutely nothing to do with Rishi Sunak.
Okay, I'll concede that point.
If it was always this easy, I wouldn't have a show.
Oh, sorry.
No, nothing at all.
No, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong, James.
That's better. Yeah,
itself.
Exactly. How do you know? I just believe it. I've got no facts whatsoever. And anyway, why won't you let me speak? What moment then was it? Because it sounds like an accumulation of issues rather than, oh my days, I can't support this lot anymore.
I think it's been everything since Boris.
Okay.
So the Christmas before he stepped down, or the
didn't really step down. Again, I'm sorry to nitpick, but you mean the Christmas before he ran away rather than face the consequences of his own actions in Parliament?
You've nailed it.
And
exactly.
The Parliament, the sovereignty of which you voted for.
Yes.
And he repeatedly ignored.
Yes.
That. So
the weeks leading up to Christmas, there was just one thing after another. You know, that's when the Partygate stories, I think that's when they started to break. The lobbying issue, I can't remember the MP who was caught up in that. Boris trying to change the rules around that.
Owen Patterson it was originally.
That's it.
Yeah.
Boris trying to change the rules, so if you were found to be acting in a way unbecoming an MP, you didn't have to step down. You just,
just change the rules. You can have Jacob Rees-Mogg led that. That save Owen. So just it's the cronyism then, the cronyism and the incompetence.
Boris just holding on for far too long before he ran away, in your words, and that's about right. Liz Truss was just absolutely dreadful.
Yes.
Absolutely awful.
I'm not going to do any nitpicking here.
And it hasn't really got any better. I think they've just been in for power too long.
But what's interesting about you is for you, it was still all to play for when Sunak got the job. Your vote was still in play when Sunak got the job. Yeah,
because I thought...
So how's he fluffed it up then?
Well, because nothing's really changed.
No. And the Rwanda thing, you did mention the Rwanda thing, because you find it ridiculous and or unpleasant.
I find it unpleasant. There's got to, illegal in immigration, it's illegal, so there should be something done about it.
In a sense, it's illegal.
Yeah.
The idea is that you process the applications and then you decide who had the right to try to come here and who didn't, whereas they treat everybody, by using that word, they treat everybody as not having the right to come here. Can I ask you an interesting question? I don't know how, you've probably seen this story already. From which African country, I'm doing this in the style of a Christmas quiz, Howard, so I hope you've got your pen and pencil ready. From which African country, heavily featured in the news in 2023, did the United Kingdom accept 6 asylum applications from in 2022?
I'm guessing the answer is Rwanda.
Yes, top of the class to Howard.
Thank you very much.
Yes, like that perfectly safe country of Rwanda, from which in 2022 this government accepted 6 asylum applications. The British government has accepted 6 people from Rwanda since it signed its controversial deportation agreement with the African country in 2022. Things you won't be reading in the Daily Mail, well, things you won't be hearing certain characters get very exercised about, chapter 564. Thank you, Howard.
The next caller is from Loughton, and it's Tony. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for taking my call. I've been a London cabbie now for 44 years, proud and distinguished, as you appreciate. I'm glad you mentioned the word high standards in your last comment. It comes to light this week that you was supporting a rally of non-speaking requirements for minicabs to be endorsed into the minicab industry, whether it's Uber or minicabs in general.
Now, I want to know why, with respect to you, sir, is the fact that why have you done this? Fundamentally, it's the most important thing, language, from driver to passenger, to go from A to B. And you've now just, a stroke of a pen, suggested the £36 on the Cyril situation is going to be abolished. Now, with respect to you, sir, why have you done this? Because if anyone gets into a minicab and they want to go to, say, even Westminster Abbey, the driver might not even understand how to get there, let alone to speak English. Now, how can you make that decision, sir?
Well, Tony, thanks for your calls. Firstly, I've made no decision. What TfL are doing is reviewing the way they test people's competence to speak English, because what we've had examples of, TfL have, is examples of where people do speak very good English but are not very good at doing tests. So what TfL are doing, and I support TfL, is reviewing the method of testing people to make sure it's fair. I'm sure you'd support that.
Listen, I mean, I understand the situation more than anyone else, being a London cabbie at the forefront for 44 years and seeing the political agenda that's gone on and the demise of the London black cab with the phasing out of the old TFX in them type of cabs. And then we've lost 3,000 drivers. And the situation now, you've took 3 years off a London cab that they shouldn't have been took off. And all these people now have gone from early retirement and when COVID was in.
What's the question, Tony, mate?
Well, it leads on to another question.
Well, no, we haven't got time for another question. What's the answer to the Seru English? No, I'm asking the Mayor. So he says you've abolished the test. Has it been abolished?
No, TfL haven't abolished the test. TfL are reviewing the method of testing people's competence, because people can speak great English, Tony being a good example, and others, may not be good at doing tests. And so what TfL are doing is reviewing the way people are tested and their English and so forth. So
does that reassure you, Tony?
Mr. Mayor, is the £7,500...
No, just on the question that you've rung in on, does that address your question?
Well, it doesn't, with respect to you, James.
So you think the Mayor is misleading me now?
It might be a vote winner. That's all I'm trying to say.
I don't understand. I really want to help you out here, because I don't understand. You've said it's been abolished. He says it hasn't been.
It hasn't. Well, all right. Well, in time will tell. Time will tell.
All right. Yeah. Well, mind how you go. John's in Brixton. John, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I mean, there's a mismatch between the volunteers and the management of these two organisations. I can only really speak about the National Trust.
From what perspective?
From the perspective of there are hundreds of thousands of people volunteering time and energy for free, because they passionately believe in maintaining these beautiful buildings and infrastructure that we can pass on for generations. And they feel that they are being managed by people who have not got the same aims as them.
That's what I meant by your perspective. With respect, mate, you can speak for yourself, but you can't speak for thousands of National Trust volunteers.
Hundreds of thousands of volunteers.
No, you can only speak for you. You can't speak for them.
I can speak for my mother.
Yeah, go on then. Well, speak for your mother, but don't speak for hundreds of thousands of people.
My mother is a Labour supporter.
Right.
But she is increasingly frustrated with the mindsets of the management and the leaders.
What sort of things?
People are classic civil servants who don't have.
They're not. They don't work for the civil service. It's a charity. But what are the things that she objects to? Where does she volunteer? No, but she volunteers in a house in Surrey. I don't want to go into the absolute details. Why not?
Because it's not fair for me to. I don't think you would speak for your mother.
You were speaking for hundreds of thousands of volunteers 2 minutes ago.
But it's common knowledge.
So what's happened in that house in Surrey that she's unhappy about?
It's a general.
I just want to. You know how it works, John. I like examples and evidence. So what's happened in that house in Surrey that's upset your mum?
Increasingly, they are bringing political doctrines into something.
For example.
It's not fair for me to speak on someone else's behalf.
Okay, an example from the entire National Trust then. Let's forget all about the house in which your mum definitely volunteers for the National Trust and talk. And I know she definitely does. In the unidentified, unnamed house where your unidentified, unnamed mother volunteers, it would be completely unfair to talk about specific examples because the unnamed, unidentified person in the unnamed, unidentified house would feel that they were having their sort of privacy compromise. So across the entire National Trust, what is the evidence, or what does your mum say, or indeed any of the other hundreds of thousands of volunteers you were claiming to speak for 2 minutes ago, what are they doing specifically that you think is objectionable?
She says, and she maintains, that a lot of the other volunteers are frustrated by the mindset.
Yes, and what's the evidence of the mindset?
Their mindset is, you could identify as woke.
Yes, but examples, John. Examples.
Examples of, they don't seem, rather than be appreciative of these beautiful architectural buildings and proud of their British virtues, they seem to be attacking.
How are they attacking them?
Because they, rather than rejoice in this great architecture we have, we spend our time attacking.
Well, it's not just about architecture, John. It's about the contents. It's about the exhibits. It's about the artwork that's on the walls. It's about the gardens. It's about the statuary. So just talk to me about the examples.
The people that contributed to make it happen.
I know, but you haven't given us a single example yet. You keep saying mindset, and I say, well, if it's an entire mindset, then it'll be easy to point to actual events, incidents, ideas. So give me one, just one.
We seem to be attacking the people that actually made these buildings happen.
Has someone pressed rewind on Global Player? Someone's pressed rewind on Global Player. I'm asking for examples. Give me an example of things being attacked.
The people who represent these buildings seem to be very interested in whether the money came from the slave trade.
Right. What's wrong with that?
Right. Now, at the end of the day, surely we should rather be rejoicing what they created.
You can do both.
And how it reflects on the positives
How can you rejoice
country.
in the creation of something without understanding how it happened?
Well, this is it. Rather than rejoice and push the virtues of the architecture, they're more worried about, did every penny come from a genuine...
Where have you seen that? Which exhibit have you seen?
Increasingly, that's...
Well, go on, give me another example. Which house? Which house have you visited and you've seen an exhibit that you felt was putting too much emphasis?
I am speaking on behalf of my mother, who is a charity worker, and she gives her time for free.
Then she's not a charity worker, then, is she? She's not a charity worker. She's a volunteer. So where is the house? Where is the house that you feel, or your mum feels?
I'm prepared to say it's a property in Surrey, and it's a National Trust property.
Right, and across the entire trust, it's 11:27 now. Are we going to have an entire conversation without you giving a single example of what you are?
Because I'm not a volunteer. I'm just trying to. I'm a Conservative. That's all.
Yes, but your mum's a Labour voter, remember, or have you forgotten that bit of the story?
She's a Labour voter.
Right,
I'm a staunch Conservative.
Yeah, so your mum, the Labour voter, has got a problem with all the things you've just failed to describe.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. She has.
Okay.
Very much so.
And one example before you go?
Just the disconnect between the management and the staff. The way they treat the staff, and there's just a high-handed attitude.
You do know what volunteer means, don't you?
But you still, yes, you're correct. But you still need to treat volunteers
So we're not talking about slavery anymore. We're talking about the high-handed attitude of the management.
The general mindset of the management.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
John, don't go, please. John?
I'm at work.
I want one example before you go. One house, one notice board, one exhibit.
I don't think it's fair for me to focus.
No, you did just for the benefit of people who are listening to this. I just want to make one thing clear. Hang on, John. I don't want to keep you from work for much longer. Can you just clarify for the benefit of people listening that you rang me today?
I rang you.
Yes, because a lot of people listening might think that I've somehow rung you and then taken you by surprise by asking you to contribute to the conversation that we're having with evidence and examples and insights, which you are clearly not prepared to give. But our very best from all of us to your mum, working so hard as a volunteer in that house in Surrey, something about which I'm sure we can all agree. Jake's in Brighton. Jake, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James. Thanks for having me on the show. I just wanted to first of all say that I agree with most of what you say, and I think you do a very good job. I don't believe it can be called genocide by any means. The Israeli government, the IDF, haven't shown any intent to commit genocide. I think the word is bandied around. I think it was bandied around before even the 7th of October by the loony left, who like to dirty the waters and object to the whole existence of Israel.
Let's focus on what is in play now. I mean, I don't know that words like loony left are helpful. If you were to do the full death toll of Palestinian people over the last 10 years or the last 20 years, it would be a big shock to many people who rely on the British media for their information. But we know what the death toll is since October the 7th. It's 25,000 people. Is there any case for wondering, and I think that the Chief Rabbi has left the door open to this question, how many people would have to be dead before that word became relevant for you?
I think the death of any individual, any civilian or military person, is very regrettable and awful. But I don't think the number of people dying can be attributed to genocide. I think,
Ever?
There's a very... No, I don't believe
But what if
so,
there was nobody left in Gaza? What would you call it then?
Well, if a group of people were attacking my family, I would keep going until they stopped. It didn't matter how big that group is, whether it's 10 people or 10 million.
But if that group is a national, ethnic or racial or religious group, then under the definition of the Geneva Convention, wiping them all out is a genocide.
No, the intent to get rid of that ethnic
but you're
group.
conflating Hamas with Palestinian civilians.
Yeah, but we...
That's terrible. You just did it so casually.
But one of the reasons is...
No, Jake, we have to stop. Jake, we have to stop here.
Yeah.
The justification for killing Palestinian children is not the actions of Hamas.
But they're not intending to kill children. That's the whole thing. It's the intent.
Well, they're not very good at it then, are they? Because they've killed 12,000.
Well, one of the reasons we know is because Hamas are hiding in hospitals and they're hiding behind people. And so the IDF, when they drop a bomb on a hospital, they will
So the punishment for being
beforehand.
held hostage by Hamas is to be killed by Israel? Or rather, the reward, perhaps. I'm very struck by what you just did.
No, but it's incidental.
I think we both are. Well, it's not incidental, is it? Because the bombs are aimed and fired.
But they're not intending to kill civilians. That's a very
What are they
important
expecting
word.
to happen?
Well, they're hoping that the area will vacate and then they can bomb wherever they need to bomb and
Based
go
on
in.
based on what?
But they've got to limit the amount of deaths, and they're trying to limit the amount of
But
deaths.
it's 25,000.
I think it's wrong to accuse them of maximising or trying to maximise death when we know that they're not.
Which is why I wondered whether there was a number at which point the word genocide would become relevant, and that's when I would hope, perhaps...
I think the word incidental,
hang on, I haven't finished.
Yeah, sorry.
That's when I would hope accidentally, that's when you used the atrocities of Hamas to justify the killing of every single Palestinian in Gaza.
But there's precautions. So what you're suggesting is that the IDF don't take precautions.
No,
when they attack.
I'm going to insist that we focus on the point that's popped up in the course of this conversation, and you're welcome to resile from what you said, but you did state that the prospect of every single person in Gaza being killed.
I don't think there is a number.
Oh, you're interrupting me again. You did state on the radio that the prospect of every single person in Gaza being killed was something you could accommodate on the grounds that they were pursuing the group that had attacked on October the 7th.
I don't think they should pursue any death, and I don't think they should pursue...
No, you do, because they are. So, again, listen, I appreciate the difficulties that you're having, and I mean that in a nice way.
Yeah.
But there has to be a point at which it becomes potentially genocidal, doesn't it?
Do you suggest...
I don't have to suggest anything. I'm here to ask questions.
Okay. It sounds to me like you're suggesting that they should pull out or desist. I don't think they should desist. I think this is a very different situation.
Then we come back to the how many dead is too many, don't we, Jake?
Well, you can't put a number. This war has to be won, and you keep using the word proportional. I don't believe...
No, I stopped using that 2 weeks ago. It stopped being proportional 2 weeks ago.
Well, I believe that they should fight this war until Hamas surrender. And that's the way most wars have been won in the past. You look at the terrible number of people that died in the First World War and Second World War.
Hamas aren't an army, they're a terrorist group, and no other wars have been fought between an army and a terrorist group.
They're the government of Gaza.
But they're a terrorist group. They're a prescribed terrorist group who put their own civilians more at risk even than the Israelis do. So I'm just trying to think. I want you to try and imagine it from the Palestinian civilians' point of view.
Oh, absolutely. And
because you've already said they deserve to die because of the actions of Hamas.
They deserve to die. You put that word in my mouth. My heart is with the Palestinian people. I feel terribly sorry for them. But
until Hamas surrender, it's just bad luck.
It's war. It is war, and war is terrible.
Though, is it?
And this war has to be fought until Hamas defeated or surrender.
And if that involves killing everyone in Gaza, that's genocide.
I don't believe IDF will kill it.
Well, fingers crossed, AJ. No, fingers crossed, eh? I mean, I don't either, but then again, I didn't believe they'd killed 25,000 people a couple of months ago, and here we are. Mary is in Ealing. Mary, what would you like to say?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity, James. You're absolutely right in asking the question. It is 100% to do with Israel and the Gaza conflict.
Well, it has to be, doesn't it?
They've said it time and time again, but this kind of news you don't get to see on Sky News or BBC. People should really switch to Jazeera English to hear it.
Well, that's owned by the Qatari government. Well, slow down, May. Sorry. Okay. That's owned by the Qatari government, and the BBC is independent. It also comes under attack from conservative politicians for being impartial. So we're not going to fall out. But I don't find. I know they're constantly accused of being anti-Israel by almost everybody on the right wing of British politics. So I find it profoundly unhelpful for people to accuse them of being biased in the opposite direction. So yeah, you're on a warning, but crack on. No, you're not on a warning. You can't encourage people to take all their news from a news organisation that's owned by a Middle Eastern country where Hamas leaders are currently sheltered and receiving sanctuary. So jog on with that as well while you're here.
No, good or bad, the Houthis have said, we will stop any ship going to Israel or owned by Israel. Now, our government has involved us directly. Now they're saying we will attack any British ships coming along.
Yes.
Because of the bombing of Yemen.
Yes,
again,
that's all true, but I'm reading that in the Daily Telegraph today. So again, your idea that the British media is somehow not reporting this was a very unfortunate starting point because it undermines everything that you say subsequently. So from the goodness of my heart, I'm prepared to ignore the silliness of your first statement and allow you to make one more.
James, they're totally not just ignoring it, they're denying it.
Yes, that's the odd bit.
Because they have to look out for Israel's interests before ours.
Well, okay, I'll leave you to deal with the dog. Zazana is in Croydon. Zazana, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi James, how are you?
I'm pretty good. What's on your mind?
A lot of people have covered a lot of things that I was going to say anyway, but I was just wanting to ask the question is, are we surprised? Are we surprised that they've pulled this out of the bag yet again?
It's an interesting question, isn't it? But you're obviously not. I think for a few hours on Friday, I thought that might be game-changing, actually, the international court's ruling. The more I understood it, the more I thought, well, they can't gloss this one, but here we are watching them gloss it.
Well, no, because already a few days even before that, they had made it clear that they were going to...
I didn't mean they. By they, I didn't mean the Israeli government. I meant the British media, actually, but that's probably my obsession rather than yours.
Yeah, no, but saying about, you know what I think what's opened my eyes a lot since October the 7th is how much the government is controlled by a certain lobby.
What do you mean by that?
The funding... I wasn't aware of how much funding was given to each party and how.
But what lobby are you talking about?
The Jewish lobby.
Well, that's where we wave goodbye to each other. I'm afraid that's another anti-Semitic trope, which does you, or indeed the cause you profess to support, no favours whatsoever. Nigel Farage talks a lot about the Jewish lobby, Susanna. Do you agree with him about much else?
No, nothing at all with him.
Well, just have a little pause and think about what you're hopping into bed with when you use language and tropes like that. Archie's in Leicester. Archie, what would you like to say?
Hello. I'd like to say I don't think the bet's as bad as it's being portrayed by the media. I think that his bet is just to ensure confidence in the British public that he will execute the Rwanda plan and send illegal immigrants there.
Why didn't he just say that then and say, I don't want to reduce it to something as crass as a bet?
Well, I think if he refused it, then the media would paint it as if that he was like a chicken and he wouldn't agree on the bet.
No,
because
they wouldn't. They wouldn't.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they just wouldn't, because no one's going to say he should have done that really crass.
No, I'm not saying that they would have said he would have done it, but they've said it hasn't installed a huge amount of confidence, just completely refusing the question. And also, I'd say the Rwanda plan, at its core, is it's effective if it's implemented in the correct way and in the correct place.
Do you know? Actually, I can disprove you on this. The Nick Ferrari offered him a bet. I didn't know this. Someone's just sent me the story. Offered him exactly the same bet in August a couple of years ago, but it was only £100 bet. I guess Nick and Piers Morgan are on different wages. But he was running in the leadership hustings, and he said, "No, I'm not taking that. What we need to do is make the plan work." And you didn't know that, so it's not as if the media went nuts about his refusal to do it.
No, but I think Piers Morgan's a lot more of a famous person compared to him. And this interview is...
No, Nick's got way more listeners than Piers Morgan has viewers.
Yeah, but Piers Morgan's been...
And this was at the leadership hustings. This was the leadership hustings televised everywhere on proper television stations.
But I just feel when
you can't carry on, Archie. You can't keep talking, can you? Because every single thing you've said has fallen apart now. So it happened on a bigger platform. It happened in public, and the former Chancellor, as he was described then, had the wherewithal to say, no, I'm not taking that bet. There are more important things to focus on. So every single thing you said is wrong.
Okay, well, that's what you think.
No, tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why that's not what's just happened.
That might have happened, but I didn't know that had happened.
Which means you're even wrong when you say that if he'd turned it down, the media would have given him a really hard time about it, because he did turn it down on a much bigger platform and the media didn't give him a hard time. So you're wrong about that as well, aren't you?
Yeah, probably. But I just didn't know. That was what I thought would happen.
But that's what proves you're wrong.
Yeah.
What else you got on today? See you, Archie. Quincy's in Tunbridge Wells. Quincy, what would you like to say?
Absolutely, we should claim the right to protest outside everybody's house, anyone's house.
Really?
And especially if you choose to run for an electoral office, and we, the public, pay for you, then we want you to hear and to speak for us and be the mouthpiece for us. You're not doing that right now. Tobias Elwood and a whole lot of other people are not doing that right now. And the reason I particularly
he's not though, is he? He's in Parliament essentially to put forward his own position, not yours.
No, I don't believe that.
You don't live in Bournemouth East. To state the bleeding obvious.
Yeah. I believe in a democracy that they speak for us.
No, you need to understand, forgive me for sounding patronising, but you need to understand the difference between a delegate and a representative. He's not a delegate, and the only person that he speaks for are the constituents of Bournemouth East who elected him, and the ones who didn't. You can't believe this. You can't believe that it's okay for anyone to turn up outside anybody else's house and start shouting the odds.
I do, because there are kids being murdered, and I want your kids to hear that. I want your kids to know that. I want you to look at your kids. When you hear me outside protesting, I want you to look at your kids and think about the kids who are dying. I want your kids to pull at your sleeves and say, "Daddy, is this real? Is this really happening?"
I think they'll be too busy. They'll be too busy being frightened, won't they?
Well, listen, we don't want to talk about the dichotomy of fear in children if we're looking between your kids and kids in Palestine.
No, of course we do. It's not a dichotomy of fear. It's your imagined reaction of what non-existent children would do in specific circumstances, and I'm suggesting that you're wrong. Most 8-year-olds are going to be more concerned about someone shouting abuse at their dad outside their sitting room window than they are about a story that they're not terribly aware of on the other side of the world. I mean, let's not be silly, Quincy.
I understand what you're saying.
Have you ever met an 8-year-old?
But the older kid who's actually getting his
You don't know how old Tobias Elwood's children are, and you've already qualified your full-throated support for all protests outside all people's house by saying, well, only if the children are old enough.
not just Tobias Elwood. No, and not only if they're old enough. Not only if they're old enough, you can get over somebody protesting outside your parents' house tonight. How long is it going to take you? Can you imagine the trauma the kids right now in Gaza?
Yes, of course I can. I talk about it all the time. I've already talked about it this morning. But how is their plight helped by terrorising Tobias Elwood's children?
We have to. I think it's the only way. I think the only way that these people are going to listen is if you bring it to their door. That's what I think. I'm not talking about violence.
No, but you can't guarantee that, can you? And violence outside someone's house is a hell of a lot more likely if there's a shouting mob there than if there isn't. But let's say...
I wouldn't advocate violence against anybody in their home or outside.
Verbal violence, forms of protest. You know
I don't like you see that. I said that at the outset. I don't believe in abusing people in or outside the home anywhere else.
So what can you do? Where's the line? Can it be permanent? Can I stay there forever?
No, but...
Well, how long
you
then?
Don't need to be there permanently, but we need to let them know that we know. I want you to know on your doorstep.
Well, do it outside Parliament then.
Think about it.
Do it outside Parliament. Do it outside the constituency office.
Outside Parliament is not their offices. It's not their home. I want them to know it at their home. I want you to know. I think it's important.
I think I disagree with you very, very strongly.
I understand, James, but I'm sorry this time.
No, it's fine. It's important to have these conversations. So the scale, another problem I've got with what you said is that all of your arguments are based upon the horrors of what is currently happening in Gaza. And yet your opening gambit was that anybody should be allowed to protest outside anybody's house. What about absolute nut jobs like anti-vaxxers? Should they be able to go and protest outside the Secretary of State for Health's house?
Anti-vaxxers are dealing with something that isn't an existential. It isn't an existential.
No, but they're adamant that it is, Quincy. They're absolutely adamant that it is.
Well, anti-vaxxers won't be able to demonstrate to me how 124 Palestinians or British.
No, you can't. You can't wriggle. You can't dodge this. You're either in favour of everybody's right to protest outside anybody's house, which are pretty much hang on a minute. Those are pretty much the exact words you used when you rang in.
I do, and I still agree to that.
So that includes flat earthers. That includes conspiracy theorists. That includes rampant anti-Semites or Islamophobes.
I'm saying in the case of an urgency like this.
Well, then you're qualifying your opening words, and urgency becomes subjective. Should the English Defence League be able to protest outside Jan-Apr's house?
I think the English Defence League should be able to protest any time, anywhere that they like.
So they should be able to protest outside.
By the way, James, Quincy is black. So I've always advocated that everybody should have the right to protest anytime, anywhere.
Well, I find that extraordinary, mate. So you white supremacists protesting outside the homes of black politicians on the grounds that A, they shouldn't be here, and B, they certainly shouldn't be in power. Outside the homes, you don't believe that.
I don't support their view, but I do.
No, I know that, but you don't believe that. You don't believe that there should be 100 people camped outside Jan-Apr's house telling her to go back to Africa. You don't believe that.
That is abusive. That's not my position.
They've accused Tobias Elwood of supporting genocide. That's abusive.
Am I supporting Tobias Elwood? Am I saying that he supports genocide?
I don't know what you're saying. You're supporting the people that are outside his house by saying that you support any protest outside anybody's house.
I support any protest outside anybody's house, especially if you're an elected official, yes.
But you don't support the Ku Klux Klan congregating outside Jan-Apr's house, do you?
Do I? Sorry, I missed that.
You don't support white supremacists congregating outside Sadiq Khan's private home.
I think that they should be able to congregate anywhere they like.
Okay, right. That is where we categorically disagree. I can see some logic, perhaps, in the argument about the urgency of the situation, but as I think we both realised halfway through that conversation, that's too subjective to be effective. So you have to either be blanket in favour or blanket against. You can't say it's okay sometimes, but it's not okay other times. And I suppose it's to your credit that you didn't try and quibble. You ended up being in favour of white supremacists protesting outside the homes of black politicians, which I find extraordinary. But then I find the protest outside Tobias Elwood's home extraordinary as well. Katie is in Ivor. Katie, what would you like to say?
Hi, morning.
Hello.
So we are in your bracket. We're both full-time working parents. We've got 2 children. We worked hard to get our deposit together because that's what you do. You go, you get a deposit and you want to buy a house. We've got a nice house, don't get me wrong, but over the years, because we're working parents, one, we don't get any help because of the price, because of the range we're in. So, for instance, we have to pay £2,500 to get our children on a school bus, whereas if we earned less, we wouldn't. Now, I'm not saying that we want to earn less, but we'd be much better off now because next year our mortgage comes up. God, it's already £1,800 a month. Don't know what it's going to be next year. We'd be better off both going, let's quit our jobs, let's lose our house, try and go and get some housing somewhere. But what does that show our children?
I don't quite follow you. I've got enormous sympathy for what you describe, but you're suggesting that if you gave up work, you'd somehow be better off.
Yeah, I mean, next year we might not have a choice to lose our house.
Yeah.
What do we do then? We could go back into rented accommodation, but even that, how do you get a...
It just seems to me, I'll choose my words very carefully, but you're doing that thing that they need you to do for this to carry on happening, Katie. You're about to tell me about someone you know on benefits who's better off than you are, aren't you?
Well, no, not necessarily.
Yeah, you
I mean,
are.
I've got a twin sister. She's on benefits. She does have more money than us, but she doesn't have what we have.
Right.
You know, she doesn't have a choice. We
she's
have
disabled.
a choice. Well, she's got lots of different things, but she doesn't have a choice where she lives. You know, she's got a nice house.
But imagine I was listening to this. I'm a Conservative politician, the sort of person you voted for. And I'm sitting there thinking, what can I do to make people like Katie blame someone else for the fact that they're struggling? And they'd be listening to this, rubbing their hands with glee. Wouldn't they?
I mean, the reason
I could give up my work now and sign on and be better off than I am. So already the unfair distribution of wealth that you're on the wrong end of, you're blaming on people who've got even less than you. They don't even own their own homes.
Because I think they look at us and look at our this bracket and think, well, you're okay. You've got a house.
Who does?
Well, we have.
Who does? Who looks at you and thinks that?
I think a lot of society, a lot of people that don't own their own homes, even people that rent.
So now you're talking about jealousy.
Well, I suppose.
Why do you keep looking down?
Jealousy.
So you're describing your struggle, and the only way you're looking is down. Isn't that odd when you think about it?
I don't know where to go with it. Next year...
Well, why aren't you looking up? Why aren't you thinking, how come he's got so much? The Prime Minister's worth, along with his wife, £600 or £700 million, and you're cross with your disabled sister.
Well, I'm not cross with her. She'd kill me.
Right.
No, I'm cross with...
Just slow down a bit. Have a think. Why are you talking about people who've got even less than you when you're unhappy with what you've got, instead of talking about people who've got more? Take your time, seriously, just because I don't think you've ever asked yourself that question before.
No, I suppose not. I suppose because we're in that bracket of we work full time, we try and try and try and try.
Yeah.
Yet we still might lose our house.
Yeah. But lots of people have lost their houses who also work incredibly hard. It's not the fault of the people who've got less than them, who've never owned a house, is it? Like you said, we could go back to renting, but what would that tell our children? So why have you never looked up when you're thinking, like, this isn't fair, this isn't right? You're looking at the people who've got even less than you instead of the people that have got more. It's just weird when you think about it.
Yeah, I suppose it is. Yeah, I've never really thought about it like that. Why were we not saying, well, the people that, you know, the taxis and things like that?
Do you think you ever will again?
Maybe now.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Remember bringing in tax cuts for people like me earning over £100,000 a year? How can that be right? How can that be fair?
I suppose we've always been kind of conditioned into blaming people that don't work.
Exactly. And that's not your fault.
Say, maybe we should be looking at the people that
do.
Aren't paying the taxes.
Yeah, or just getting quite an easy ride from things, or paying a smaller percentage on their income from money they make on shares than the income that they make from working. So Rishi Sunak pays less tax on the profits he makes from his shares than he does on the money that he actually earns. The percentage on capital gains is lower than income tax. So if he's got £1 million worth of shares, the tax he pays on the profits, the money he gets for doing nothing, except sitting there and waiting for the checks to arrive, The percentage rate of tax he pays on that is lower than what you and your husband pay on your income.
Well, one thing I'm pleased about ringing in for today is because hopefully me and a lot of other people will look at it in a completely different way.
I hope so. I do. And thank you for letting me, because I was conscious of perhaps being a little bit patronising. But it's so easy, like you said, to fall into the trap of thinking, and we haven't even mentioned foreigners or immigrants, but we won't today, but falling into the trap of thinking it's their fault that things are going badly for me. And I swear to you, listening to you in Downing Street going, yeah, we got her. She's there. There it is. There's a quote by a Welsh politician called Aneurin Bevan who describes the triumph of 20th century conservatism as persuading poverty to use their power, wealth persuading poverty to use their power to keep wealth in power. And I'm not suggesting that you fit into the category of poverty, but persuading people to use their democratic power to perpetuate an unfairness that they actually suffer from is indeed the definition of the last 124 years or so of British politics. Katie, take care, and I hope things pick up for you. I really do. I hope the house isn't in any form of jeopardy. Lee's in Newport. What happened yesterday, Lee?
Lee, James, thank you very much for taking my call. You totally, I was going to say a lot of whataboutism from you this morning, but to be honest with you, I totally agree with what you just said then in your monologue, and they've been here 14 years, so they've got to go now. Just phoning up then regarding what happened yesterday. It was an opposition day, wasn't it, for the SNP? They've been clear with their Gaza ceasefire notion ever since October the 8th. Also, as you know, the SNP leader, Mr. Yousaf's family, was stuck in Gaza.
Yes.
And they couldn't get out. But also as well, what I found out last night as well, that Mr. Hanson Yousaf's brother-in-law is actually a doctor in the hospital and choose to stay behind, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, with the
but that doesn't give the SNP ownership of the issue, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, I agree with you. I agree on that. But right now, if Hanson Yousaf's brother-in-law is in this hospital while bombs are going all around, now basically Israel's blowing up hospitals without sufficient evidence. That is what is going on. That's what they're doing. So,
well, again, I've got to be the referee now. So, well, they would claim that they had sufficient evidence. They would claim that.
They said
you're talking about Ramzi El Nakla, the brother of Mr. Yousaf's. Oh, no, you're not. You're talking about a different brother-in-law. He's the one who's been arrested. My apologies. The one who's in Gaza at the moment, working in a Gazan hospital. You're quite right.
Exactly. No, basically, they said that it was like an underground headquarters under Al-Shifa Hospital. Obviously, they wasn't. Do you know what I mean? They wasn't.
Well, they posted pictures of something, but what are we digressing a little bit? Just get straight to the nub of it.
Yeah, sorry, I will. Now, basically, why couldn't Labour vote for the what was it? The
collective punishment.
The collective punishment. No,
it's a war crime. It's a war crime.
Let me just put. Yeah, there's a war crime. Exactly right. Now, if they vote on that, what that could also have done, right? That could have put pressure, right, on Israel.
It wouldn't, mate.
It could have.
It wouldn't.
Of course, it could have.
Of course, it wouldn't.
Because let me finish, sir.
I am going to let you finish, but you'll still be wrong.
Yeah, there was basically as well. There was indiscriminate bombing. That has also been admitted by President Biden as well, wasn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, we know that a majority, a percentage of it, but you're covering. It's almost as if you've rang the wrong phone in.
Basically,
Lee.
what I feel.
You phoned. You phoned it. We've done these phone-ins, and we will do them again. But we're not.
No, I'm not going through that part. I'm just going back to what I was saying.
Go on then.
I feel right. There has to be pressure now asserted onto Israel. There has to be, James. There has to be. There has to be a stop to this. So basically, if they would have voted on that, it would have helped to put pressure, not exerted straightaway pressure. It would have helped to build.
But it wouldn't have gone through. It wouldn't have gone through. But it wouldn't have gone through.
UN investigators in there to investigate.
But it wouldn't have gone through.
Look what is really going on inside.
No, okay, I hear you, and I mean, we're not going to fall out. It wouldn't have gone through though. So I mean, your hypotheticals are built upon a presumption that's false. Would I like to see some of the stuff that you've just described? Do I agree with your analysis of some of the things that you've just said? Yeah, but the point to which they were all leading us doesn't exist. It wouldn't have happened. Thank you, Lee, and thank you for indulging my impatience as well. Naomi's in Plymouth. Naomi, what would you like to say?
Hello, good morning, James. So yes, I go to the marches most weeks as much as I can.
Are you an Islamist, an extremist, an anti-Semite, or just a normal hate marcher, Naomi?
I'm just a regular person.
Oh.
Sorry to upset you there.
Yes.
But no, people that go to those marches, I'm a nurse, I'm a registered nurse, there's professors, there's doctors, you've got the Jewish bloc, the Orthodox Jews, as you just mentioned, that are there every single week. I mean, why are the news not portraying and actually showing all these other groups of people that actually attend these marches? So for me, this hate that they are spewing is like the hate against Jeremy Corbyn. They wanted to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn because actually Jeremy Corbyn
let's not get distracted.
The government.
You can hang on. I mean, this is a bit of a hijack of the show because the defence.
It's not a hijack of the show.
Well, hang on. How do you know what was? Tell me what was I about to say? What was I about to say? Hang on. What was I about to say? No, we're off. What was I about to say that you knew was wrong?
What were you about to say?
No, you tell me because you knew it was wrong.
No, it wasn't. I didn't hijack your show.
No, I just told you that this was a bit of a distraction and you said it wasn't, so you must have known what I was going to say.
It wasn't.
All right, take a guess. You remember earlier I said the wife of a former prominent Labour politician had accused Keir Starmer of being controlled by the Israeli government this weekend. Guess who it was?
Who was that?
Take a guess.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, you do. You can't get his name out of your mouth.
I've actually missed that bit of news.
Go on. Well, take a wild guess then.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Take a wild guess. Well, it's a definition of anti-Semitism to claim that a Western politician is controlled by the Israeli government.
We've totally gone off the subject.
Well, you just said we hadn't.
There's doctors.
You just said we hadn't.
Hospitals.
Yes.
At these marches.
Well, I know
just said the Jewish bloc are there. Why does the news not portray this? Why is the news not even actually really filming our marches?
Well, it's trying to, but I agree with you. It's not there. Just to be absolutely clear on the Jeremy Corbyn point, none of the people you were marching with, as far as you're aware, ever wrote the foreword for a profoundly anti-Semitic book, did they?
No.
No, because he did. Brett's in Boreham Wood. Brett, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Well, I'm not your demographic. I'm a Tory councillor in Radler, actually, from Boreham Wood.
I
thought you were looking for a Tory voice.
There is. I do not have a demographic, Brett. We deal only in principles and facts on this programme. So I'm sure you are my demographic.
Okay. Well, my point is, Lee Anderson was wrong in what he said. He was trying to take something. He was using something that Sadiq Khan said in 2017 about moderate Muslims and trying to turn that into something else. He was wrong in saying that. The problem I have with this whole conversation is anti-Semitism as a Jew. Now, what has happened in this conversation, we started with Big Ben projecting what I believe and what 90% of Jewish people believe is a genocidal chant from the river to the sea.
Except when Benjamin Netanyahu puts it in election material.
Yeah, I understand that. Again, I understand that, but I think at the same time he's doing that as a response to what he's hearing in...
But he's literally... I've seen him holding up a map which has Israel extending from the river to the sea and making it clear that that's his ambition.
Benjamin Netanyahu would likely get taken out, will likely get voted out at the next election. So we'll see.
But he's not, though, is he? He's currently the Prime Minister of Israel. I mean, I take your point, and I believe that you're making the point in good faith, but you can't just gloss over the fact that the man who's currently leading the attack on Gaza routinely deploys the notion of from the river to the sea as an electoral lever.
Again, I don't want to talk about Gaza. I want to talk about...
Well, you have to, because the reason the reason that phrase was projected onto the Elizabeth Tower was precisely because of what's happening in Gaza.
Well, look...
So you can't talk about one without the other, Brett.
If you want to talk about Gaza...
I don't particularly. I want to talk about Lee Anderson. You brought Gaza into it. I'm not quite sure why.
Okay. Can we start again? So
yeah, of course we can.
We've got a projection of from the river to the sea, which 90%...
No, but we're talking about Gaza now.
You're talking over me. You're talking about over me, okay? 90% of Jews...
I'm sorry, I am going to talk over you if you say things that are disingenuous. You said we were going to start over and not talk about Gaza.
But it's... Okay, 90% of Jews believe that chant is anti-Semitic.
Except when Benjamin Netanyahu uses it.
Now, again, I'm trying to talk about anti-Semitism, and you're just trying to talk over it to talk about...
No, I'm not, Brett. I'm trying to point out to you what everybody listening hears. They hear you saying that those words are toxic, but not acknowledging the fact that they're used by Israeli politicians quite regularly.
There are some toxic Israeli politicians. I'm not denying that.
In charge.
At all. in charge. But
and currently overseeing the attack upon the Palestinian people in Gaza, which is what the protests...
Palestinian people, it's an attack on Hamas. And please do not conflate the two. It's an attack on the Hamas terrorist
the death toll conflates the two.
Well, okay, so let's say 30,000 people. Okay, let's talk about the death toll.
Well, I wanted to talk about Lee Anderson.
James, 1 second, because you wanted to bring this up. 30,000 was talked about in British Parliament plenty of times. That's an inflated number from Hamas. Hamas was at 28,000. Now let's take 11,000 off that. Let's call them terrorists, okay? So we're left with...
Where does that number come from?
So you think all 29,000 are...
No, I don't know what I think. I'm asking you what you think. Where does that number come from?
I would say that when the IDF and Israel have announced that it's 10 or 11,000 combatants that are being killed, that's quite a...
Okay, just checking on your... Well, it's not verifiable. I've checked. They have said that, and it may be true. But why are we having this conversation when we're talking about the Tories' problem with Islamophobia?
All I said was I believe, and many Jews believe, from the river to the sea is a genocidal
But I have to now repeat, except when Benjamin Netanyahu says it.
That's in response, okay? Can we just talk about what...
Well, it doesn't work like that, Brett. You say things, I respond to them.
Okay, can you let me carry on my conversation?
Well, is it going to involve Lee Anderson and the Conservative Party at any point?
I won't repeat that. So, he was wrong, okay, in saying what he did, but now the conversation has turned to Islamophobia, okay? Any criticism of anything Islam-related is now Islamophobia.
No, that's not true.
Wait, I want to carry on.
Well, you can't say things that aren't true, Brett.
Now we've forgotten, James, about the anti-Semitism, which is absolutely rife, vile, and very, very threatening to the Jewish community. Okay, synagogues are being hounded. Jewish schools, okay, are under threat as well. It's a completely different sort of thing. If you look at the population of Jewish people in the UK, it's 270,000, something thereabouts. Population of Muslims in the UK is 4 million. If you look at the number of incidents of hate crimes between the two religions, they are round about the same, which shows that they're both awful. Of course, anti-Muslim hatred is awful. However, it is incredibly prevalent within, and pretty much 1,000 times more prevalent within the population of Jews. Now, what I'm saying is now we're having this whole conversation about one MP out of 650 who may have said something pretty damn silly, but we've now moved the whole conversation away from anti-Semitism. And how
well, no, but Brett, can I speak now?
James,
no, you carry on.
There are a number of mosques in the UK. Okay, I am certainly not an Islamophobe. I'm not anti-Muslim, but I'm worried about the prevalence of anti-Semitism within Islam in mosques in the UK.
Okay, here's the thing. So am I. Okay, I'm also worried about the prevalence of Islamophobia, and I think that we probably rightly, given the statistics that you described, spend a lot more time talking about anti-Semitism than we do about Islamophobia. But the reason why this conversation is, and you must understand this, Brett, the reason why this conversation is unfolding in the way that it is on this day is as a direct consequence of a former deputy chairman of the Conservative Party indulging in base Islamophobia. And the fact that you don't want that conversation to be had is just a little odd. I would say to you that both conversations can be held. Why do you want to close one of them down?
I don't. I just feel
you did.
You've
literally phoned in to object to the fact that we're talking about Islamophobia, Brett, and that's just weird.
I think no, it's not weird. And stop taking things out of context, James.
I'm not, mate. Everyone's heard the conversation, Brett. Everyone's heard exactly what you said. That is, you rang in to complain that we were talking about Islamophobia.
Because of my reasons. We were having a proper conversation about anti-Semitism, how to stop it.
Yes, and today we're having a conversation about Islamophobia. Why can't we do both?
Western people in the UK cannot raise anti-Semitism without raising Islamophobia at the same time.
That's not true.
Have to be mutually
That's not true. We spoke for the duration of Jeremy Corbyn's leadership of the Labour Party about the anti-Semitism
because it was horrendously rampant.
Yes, but you can't keep contradicting. You can't keep contradicting yourself. You just said we can't talk about it without bringing Islamophobia into it. I'm reminding you that we can, we do, and we did. So, in a couple of sentences, I need a couple of things from you. In a couple of sentences, who do we get permission from to have a conversation about Islamophobia?
Well, of course we can have a conversation about Islamophobia.
Thank you. And the second thing is, which currently serving MP would you say stood comparison with Lee Anderson for anti-Semitism that you could compare to Any party that you could compare, and be aware of libel laws, that you could compare to what Lee Anderson and Suella Braverman are now saying about Muslims?
Well, I could say what about Muslims?
No, someone who's a serving MP whose anti-Semitism is of a piece with the Islamophobia displayed by Lee Anderson and Suella Braverman.
Oh, I think there's many within the Labour Party still, all the Green parties, many.
They don't have any MPs.
Within the Labour Party, there are many.
Who?
Well, Dawn Butler.
Okay, you're accusing Dawn Butler of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, easily.
Okay, and your evidence?
Oh, yeah, some of the things that she says online. There is absolutely. Look, I think for Jewish people.
No, you need to give me the evidence now, Brett. Respectfully, you need to give us the evidence now.
Well, I can't just read something. I'm on the phone to you. I can't just read something.
But you've literally just accused an MP of anti-Semitism. You can't then say I don't have any evidence.
Well, she's in the same boat as Jeremy Corbyn, so pretty much anything that Jeremy Corbyn
the evidence?
has said...
The evidence?
Like I just said, she is basically...
Jeremy Corbyn's not a Labour MP. Dawn Butler is.
Okay.
So, Brett, the evidence? You're a Conservative councillor accusing a Labour MP of anti-Semitism on national radio, and all I'm asking you for is your evidence, mate.
You're talking about Lee Anderson as a previous deputy chair of the party.
Yes.
I'm talking about Jeremy Corbyn as a previous leader.
No. I said serving MP for a reason, because Keir Starmer has got rid of Jeremy Corbyn. He is tackling anti-Semitism in a way that Rishi Sunak is not tackling Islamophobia. So just once more, in case our lawyers are listening, the evidence that Dawn Butler is anti-Semitic.
Absolutely bang out of order.
The evidence.
And you should be called out for this.
The evidence.
You're trying to put me into a trap.
No, I asked you a question to which you could have said I can't think of anyone.
And I think it's disgusting.
Yes, well, I think the evidence is viewed.
Through you. Your listeners see through you.
I'm sure they do, Brett. But in conclusion, the evidence, please.
I just said it's the same thing as Diane Abbott. You know, do you want evidence of Diane Abbott and some of the stupid things that she said?
Not stupid, anti-Semitic from Dawn Butler.
Gingers received the
from
same
Dawn
thing as
Butler.
Oh, okay. I don't have my phone on me to be able to read through Twitter, but she has said.
But I don't have my phone on me to be able to read through Twitter. But I can tell you what Suella Braverman and Lee Anderson have said that's Islamophobic.
Because they are always in the news at the moment because you're pushing that agenda. Because that's exactly
pushing that agenda. That's an interesting trope. What do you mean by that?
You are a funny man, James O'Brien, because you're
a Conservative councillor, Brett, in Boreham Wood.
Yes, and
accusing politicians of anti-Semitism without any evidence whatsoever.
No, I'll go through Twitter in a minute, shall I? As soon as I got off this call.
Yeah, if you want, mate.
Honestly, I think you're incredibly patronising.
It's not my fault you've come on the radio and made a fool of yourself.
All I've come on is to talk about the Jewish population.
You've come on to complain that we're having a conversation about Islamophobia, and you've ended up accusing Dawn Butler of anti-Semitism without any evidence whatsoever.
You put me in a box, James. You put me in a box.
You put yourself in a box, Brett.
Purposely showing that you've got absolute contempt for the Jewish population.
So you're accusing me of anti-Semitism now?
Oh, I said contempt. Contempt, not anti-Semitism.
What's the difference?
Well, there is a difference.
What is it?
Well, you haven't said any words that are anti-Jewish hate. However, you're pushing this argument.
So what's the evidence for my contempt for Jewish people then?
Who came on this call?
What's your evidence for my contempt for Jewish people?
UK, to talk about anti-Semitism in the UK.
No, you phoned a phone in about Islamophobia.
Some sort of problem.
You phoned a phone in about Islamophobia. What's your evidence for my contempt for Jewish people, Brett? I take this quite seriously, actually. I think much of your call has been ridiculous, but I take this very seriously. What's your evidence?
Because you're trying to turn my conversation away from me talking about how Jews feel in the UK at the moment.
It's a conversation about Islamophobia. You phoned in to complain that we were having it. Now tell me what your evidence is for my contempt for Jewish people, Brett.
Because, do you know what? If I start raising some things like about issues with anti-Semitism in mosques, you're still trying to push me.
No, we're talking about my contempt for Jewish people. Give me some proof.
Because the fact that I've just come on this show as a heartfelt trying to ensure that the Jewish population gets a voice in all of this, instead of turning the conversation specifically to Islamophobia, which is a very...
So by talking about Islamophobia, I'm displaying contempt for the Jewish people, Brett?
No, the fact that you, instead of just listening and having empathy to what I've had to say...
I have empathy for some of the things that you've described, but I pick you up on things that are challengeable. Once again, your evidence of my contempt for the Jewish people, apart from the fact that I've been talking about anti-Muslim hatred today.
But do you know what? It'd be worth going on YouGov, doing a poll about the Jewish population, what they think of yourself at this very present moment.
I'd ask you again, what's your evidence for my contempt for Jewish people, Brett? That's a very serious allegation that you've made.
Think of James O'Brien at the moment.
Yeah, I look forward to it. But in the meantime, your evidence, please.
I've just told you.
No, you haven't.
I've just told you that I've come on this show to have a conversation about anti-Semitism being taken away.
But it's a phone-in about Islamophobia.
No, it started. No, because this all started with Big Ben.
This started with Lee Anderson losing the whip for being Islamophobic, and the question I've asked about 14 times since 10 o'clock this morning is how have the Conservative Party got themselves into such a mess over Islamophobia? But I'd ask you, Brett, the question that remains, and we're going to have to call it a day soon, is your evidence, please, for my contempt for Jewish people. Because ridiculous though you are, I do find that hurtful and offensive.
And there we go. You just called me ridiculous.
Well,
okay?
prove me wrong by giving me the evidence. Prove me wrong by giving me the evidence.
I'm just trying to have a decent, empathetic...
No, you accuse me of contempt for Jewish people. That's neither decent nor empathetic.
You're dealing with me. It's just a perfect example of patronising
Where's your
the
evidence?
Jewish population. Oh, my God. It's like... I don't know. Sometimes... I don't even know why I listen to you sometimes.
Where's your evidence?
I've just told you. You turned me coming on your show to talk a little bit about anti-Semitism.
On the contrary, Brett.
Me being ridiculous.
On the contrary, you rang in to complain that we were having a phone-in about Islamophobia. You've ended up accusing Dawn Butler of anti-Semitism and me of contempt for the Jewish people.
Well, do you know
Have a great day, Brett.
Dina's in Cheltenham. Dina, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
I have always voted Labour, and I will not be voting Labour because of Keir Starmer's very late response to what's going on in Gaza.
But it's the correct response, but it's late.
Leaps and bounds,
yes.
But he hasn't responded soon enough. And it's a matter of humanity. The lack of humanity from the two leading parties is causing outrage amongst lots of people that don't have relatives in Gaza. I'm talking about native-born British, Scottish, Welsh people. It's refreshing to see that we're going to have a different voice in Westminster.
Okay. You know he was endorsed by Nick Griffin.
I don't want to get into that because
you have to because you just said you welcome his voice because you're in the same camp as Nick Griffin, Dina. You both welcome this new voice in Westminster. I just wondered if you'd reflect on that for a minute.
I abhor Nick Griffin, and I don't.
But you both welcome this new voice in Westminster.
Not because, and I don't think he has endorsed Nick Griffin.
Nick Griffin endorsed George Galloway.
He's just jumping on the bandwagon. I don't think it's reversed. I don't think George Galloway supports anything that Nick Griffin
George Galloway's huge victory in Rochdale is a great result, not just because he'll be an eloquent voice in the House of Treason against Zionist ethnic cleansing, NATO aggression against Russia, austerity and net zero carbon hysteria. The result also shows that we're moving from the old two-party class divide to a society where tribal lines count. While white people, the English especially, are slow learners, they will follow the Muslim lead eventually. Listen, it's not your fault that you weren't aware that he'd been endorsed by the former leader of the British National Party, but I think it should possibly give us all pause to reflect on the question of whether you might have a point to make, but George Galloway is not really the proof of the pudding that you want.
He's not the proof of the pudding that I want, but he is a voice that is, other than the SNP, that has been muffled in Westminster. And you can
Not
see
true. Jess Phillips resigned the whip in order to vote for a ceasefire with the SNP. She gave up her job as a junior minister. Now there's a voice in Westminster that doesn't come with the endorsement of Nick Griffin.
And I support Jess Phillips' stance, but
she wasn't muffled by anyone, was she? In fact, none of the Labour frontbenchers who voted for that original SNP motion were muffled.
But I'm going back to Keir Starmer's decision and the voice of the Labour Party as a whole. He did not come out and ask for a ceasefire soon enough.
No, I hear you.
You can see what's going on now in Israel. And just yesterday, the 100 deaths, where now food trucks. I know we do not know the true story. We have got no journalists.
Oh, we are forced by the failure of Israel to allow journalists into Gaza to say that there is still a lack of certainty over how the people died after the Israeli army opened fire on starving Palestinians trying to get their hand on some food. So, I mean, you can phrase these things as cautiously or as incautiously as you want. I've got to go to the news because Henry Riley's got a train to catch. I don't know if you heard me mention that earlier, Dina. So he's going to be standing at Rochdale Station. People are going to be pointing at him. But when did it become too late? And I know that's a tricky question, and you don't have to answer it because I've kind of ambushed you with it. But when did it become too late? Because it would have been wrong to tell Israel not to respond to the terror attack. But so when did it become? And then there needs to be a period of grace where you might have wished he had done it, but you understood why he hadn't. When did the point come where you thought it's too late now? Whatever he says tomorrow, today is too late.
When it became very clear that the Israel's, the IDF, Netanyahu's sole aim was collective punishment, and Keir Starmer did not out Netanyahu.
And you can't put a date on that, really. And that's not a criticism. I don't think I could either. If I agreed with your analysis, I'd struggle to put a precise date on when it kicked in.
Well, again, it goes back to the fact that we've got no journalists on the ground reporting. So
there are some, but
as you say, are always going to deny any figures that come out and say that they are Hamas figures. But even if we go on IDF's assumption that they have killed 12,000 Hamas or whatever, it is still collective punishment when we look at the children's lives and the mothers' lives.
Okay, I'm glad we had this conversation. I'm glad that you... Well, not glad that you didn't know about Nick Griffin, but I would urge everybody thinking that George Galloway is good news for whatever it is they believe to be a little bit clearer on what it is that George Galloway believes or indeed doesn't believe. But I don't want to sound patronising. Let's start in Israel. Let's start in Tel Aviv with Melvin. Melvin, what made you pick up the phone?
Well, I've been listening to your introduction, and as an Israeli, I totally agree that Mr. Netanyahu ought to be replaced. We have an election system. We have a proper democracy. In fact, it's probably too democratic sometimes.
That's a conversation for another day, I think.
Right. Assuming that the election delivers somebody new, I would welcome that. I abhor having people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir in the government. However, I think there's a huge confusion. And the first thing is I resent Mr. Schumer creating an immoral equivalence between Hamas and Netanyahu. There is just no comparison, absolutely none. I also think
I can't speak for Chuck Schumer, but on the simple question of opposition to a two-state solution, there's quite a lot of common ground.
Well, there may be, but that does.
So that's not a moral. That's not a moral equivalence. That's a policy equivalence.
Okay, there might be a policy equivalence, perhaps. I'm not sure that in the foreseeable future, meaning your lifetimes and mine, that a Palestinian state is viable. I'm not sure that the Palestinians actually want it. If you listen to whether it's the people on the streets of New York and London or the Palestinians in this part of the world, they really want a state instead of Israel, not next door to Israel. And it's going to take a generation or two of re-education before that changes.
Well, so I can't let you speak for supporters of the Palestinian state, Melvin, can I?
No, you can't. I'm not a supporter of a Palestinian state.
No, I know you're not, but you can't tell me or my listeners what the people who do want a Palestinian state really believe or really want. Only they can tell us that.
No, but I can tell you what I'm hearing from them.
Of course you can, but we all hear sometimes what we want to hear. There are plenty of people supportive of a two-state solution. You know there are.
Yes, in Europe and America, not around this part of the world.
Well, you just talked about the streets of London and New York a minute ago, so make your mind up with respect.
No, but I'm talking about from an Israeli point of view and a Middle Eastern point of view. Nobody really believes it's going to happen in our lifetimes.
That's a fair comment, but you can only speak for yourself. So if someone rings in and says the opposite, I will remind them that they can only speak for themselves. It's not always helpful to claim to have a sort of unique insight into the thinking of millions of people who aren't going to ring me today. But what about Schumer's...
my opinion.
I know you are. Your opinion of what other people think. What about Schumer's warning for Israel's survival? What about this relationship between pariah status and survival? Does that you think he's got that wrong as well? Does that not give you pause?
Well, I think it's a very extreme thing
Come on, man. This is Chuck Schumer. 25 years of almost unquestioning support for Israel. It's got to be a moment of reflection, hasn't it?
I told you at the very beginning of this conversation, I'm really unhappy with the extreme government we have. I don't for a moment support it. I go out demonstrating every Saturday night against it. That does not mean Israel is a pariah state.
No, but the fear he has is that it is becoming one as a consequence of the actions that you're protesting against. That doesn't seem to me to be an enormous logical leap.
Well, I think that
Why are you protesting against it?
No, let me...
Of course I will, sorry.
Let me explain.
Yes, of course.
So people are confusing Netanyahu's government with support for the war that's going on. And I would say to you that people like me who want to see a new government, want to see a moderate government, however, we support the intention to destroy Hamas's military capability. We all hate, and I really mean this, we hate the death toll on both sides. We really do. But nobody's found a way to fight a war without innocent civilians dying. And, but nobody in Israel wants to see this war end until the...
You've done it again, haven't you? Because there are loads of people in Israel who've called for a ceasefire.
Well, I live here.
Well, I know you do, but it doesn't mean you have it. Doesn't mean you have like a magic phone line into everybody's mind. You know that there's plenty of people in Israel calling for a ceasefire.
Well,
you can't say nobody in Israel. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu says that we're never going to finish until it's completely over. The plausibility of that is probably zero. But I can't just, I don't want to go around in circles, Melvin, but you can't speak for everybody who wants a two-state solution any more than you can speak for every Israeli. And you don't want the war to end. So I'll ask you finally. No, well, of course you do. And you hear it on the street when you're surrounded by the people that are protesting with you. But the question I've asked everybody since this nightmare began is whenever people tell me that they abhor all deaths and they're very unhappy with all that, how many is too many?
I wouldn't put it that way. I would say
I am. That's what I'm asking you.
Okay, all right. I can't put a limit. How many was too many in Dresden?
Because Chuck Schumer can.
Was too many in Hiroshima? Chuck Schumer can say what he likes. He's an American.
And so can you. And so how many is too many?
I want the minimum deaths necessary
that ship has sailed.
Achieve what we have to achieve.
That ship has sailed. So how many is too many?
That ship has not sailed. We are still fighting. And at the moment, we're assuming that 80% of Hamas has been destroyed. We cannot allow the other 20% to set fire. It's like putting 80% of a fire out. The 20% remaining
I'd like to talk to you more about that. I can't because of the timing. And I'd like to have a calm conversation about what seems to so many to be I think, to be generous, the epic naivety of believing that by killing everybody in Gaza, or killing thousands and thousands of people in Gaza, and hopefully catching all members of Hamas in that increasingly indiscriminate net, you'll somehow kill off the ideology. It's so obvious to so many people watching that if you kill someone's dad because he's in Hamas, they sign up for the same ideology, the same cause in that moment. But we'll have to have that conversation another day. So no pressure, Jamie, in Canterbury. What would you like to say?
Hi there. I wanted to say that it doesn't seem to be a motoring problem. It seems to be just another attack on the population.
What's an attack?
Well, it seems that it's what we hear is more rules every day.
But the rules aren't an attack, are they? I mean, things like not being able to drink a bottle of whiskey before you drive a car isn't an attack. It's a fairly good rule.
Well, for sure, they are. Those are good rules. But
which rules are attacks?
Well, it feels that, for instance, that we're under more and more pressure.
Yeah, I know, but I'm asking for examples.
For examples, the clean air zones with small businesses already under incredible pressure. They don't have a problem with a clean air zone, but it's just another expense.
So who's getting attacked then there?
It's another restriction.
So who's getting attacked?
Well, it would be the small businesses that are getting attacked there.
Which what? By what? Because they have to drive cleaner vehicles.
They have to drive cleaner vehicles, but it's not the fact they have to drive cleaner vehicles. It's the fact that they have to find the funding for new vehicles. They have to find the sort of the time to put into it as well. But
you don't know anyone in that category.
I don't personally know them, but it's listening to your show and other shows.
Well, it's definitely not listening to my show. So you've now got a theoretical victim of an attack that you have no personal experience of whatsoever, but you feel strongly enough to ring a radio station.
Well, I feel strongly enough to ring because
I know you're here. I can hear you.
Yes, of course. But it feels that sort of every day we get up, there are lots of things that we would like fixing. Like we'd like the hospitals fixing. We'd like sort of GP appointments fixing. We'd like immigration fixed. We'd like more council.
There it is. That didn't take long.
But all of these things, we'd like potholes fixed.
Yes.
All of these things that we'd like to be fixed, and that we're told.
Some of us would like dirty air to be fixed.
Well, we would indeed, but in a way.
Well, no, because when they try and do that, it's an attack.
It feels like it. It feels like there's all these promises.
But it can only feel like an attack if you're being attacked, and you're not being attacked.
But it feels like
you've just had to invent some business people that you've never met to prove that there is an attack underway because you're not personally being attacked. You just feel like you're being attacked, which might be a you problem.
Well, not necessarily a me problem.
Well, I don't feel attacked. I don't feel attacked.
But I mean, I have a business, and we have so many rules, so many regulations about shipping into Europe that it's now become impossible. Shipping worldwide.
Well, that's because of Brexit.
Small business. Sorry?
That's largely because of Brexit. We've made it much harder to ship into Europe, but people voted for that.
We did.
Yeah.
And,
did you?
And we have a government that promised they're going to help us with all of these
Did you
things.
vote for it?
Did I vote for it? No, I didn't, no. But No, I didn't vote for it.
Okay.
No, because
the kind of people that voted for it are generally, Jamie, the kind of people who insist that they're under attack without being able to describe any of the ways in which they are actually under attack. They, in my experience, they are the kind of people that voted for Brexit.
Well, possibly, but I didn't. But I mean, what it seems like, trying to put it into a short point, is that it feels that there are so many things that we are more and more responsible for. We are being,
but we can't name any.
Into doing.
We can't name any, apart from the rules that have come in as a consequence of Brexit.
Well, there's the rules that have come into the consequence of Brexit.
So you personally, Jamie in Canterbury, the best example of you being under attack as a motorist is.
Well, the best example is that I can't drive my vehicle into London because of the extra costs. And as I mentioned, it's not.
You can drive your vehicle into London. You just have to pay the costs.
But it doesn't seem a war on motorists. It seems a war on the people, the wider social context.
Okay. And the proof is the congestion charge.
Well, not necessarily that, but it's everything. It's nothing.
Well, it's not. You keep saying it's everything. I don't feel under attack. Maybe you should just be more like me.
Well, we do feel under attack. We feel that nothing is being resolved. Nothing is being fixed.
Who's we?
Every time we step out of the door, there's more and more.
I feel for you, man. I really feel for you. Every time you step out of the door, you feel you're under attack from more and more regulations. Except, obviously, the one you've mentioned is one that isn't outside your door. You'd have to drive all the way to London to be affected by that regulation. So when you step outside your door, what's the regulation that hits you first?
There isn't one particular.
Well, just name 5 then.
It's
go on.
Higher taxes.
Yeah.
Higher car insurance.
Yeah.
More restrictions on where we can park.
Yeah.
More restrictions on trying to use retail areas.
Okay.
More restrictions on trying to visit a hospital.
How are there restrictions on trying to visit a hospital?
Sorry?
How are there restrictions on trying to visit a hospital?
What, motoring restrictions?
Oh, we're back to motoring now.
Well, no, I'm just saying if you're bringing it back to motoring. So it's more difficult to visit people there.
Okay.
If you've got a problem, it's more difficult to visit there yourself because you can't park anywhere near it.
Okay. Well, you can, though. You can do all of these things, and nothing's changed. None of the things you're describing are new developments. But I feel for you. And I know it sounds like I don't, but I really do. It must be awful to feel under attack in the way that you describe. I just don't feel it. And I don't understand what the difference is between us. Except perhaps, I don't know, really. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. And in a sense, that is a helpful reminder of where motoring phone-ins normally go. This sort of unspecified or difficult to pin down grievance that other people feed, and I try to cure. But in your case, I failed, and I apologise for that. I'd like you to have said goodbye at the end of this call feeling less attacked and less aggrieved and less persecuted and less besieged by rules and regulations. But I sense I failed, which means I'll have to try again on another occasion. Sal's in Paddington. Sal, what would you like to say?
Hello.
Hello, Sal.
That's certainly my take on it. Do you know when the last women's-only club was founded in London?
No.
2018.
Yes. But that's
not called the Albright after Madeleine Albright.
Yeah.
Now,
hang on. Why does that matter? Why is that relevant?
Because although I agree that the Garrick Club was born out of basically the historic patriarchal way that all clubs were. This includes like the Oxford and Cambridge Club, which began associate memberships for women where they only had one ladies' room, which was basically a big tea room, and became sort of fully integrated in about the mid-90s, I think.
Yes.
And
don't get distracted. Why do you think that the Albright Club is comparable to the Garrick Club? Because to me, it seems pretty obvious why they're not remotely similar.
Because one has organically grown out of a patriarchal society and is still. It's not as though women are banned from the premises. So we're not talking about. I don't think today.
No, but the Albright Club, the Albright Club would be dedicated to ensuring that more women get into the kind of jobs that men who are members of the Garrick Club already have. So one is a protector of historic privilege, and one is a challenge to historic privilege. So they couldn't be more different.
But that argument would be. That argument presupposes that is the intention of a social club, which I would argue is not necessarily the case. It's a case of.
And why do they have membership criteria then? Why do they have membership? Why do they have membership criteria then? Why do people get blackballed?
But that also happens in life with friendship circles.
Well,
I don't mean a formal election.
Doesn't really. You can't have a friendship circle that bans women.
No, I certainly don't. But
I think let's park the Albright Club, because I don't think that's not as helpful as you thought it was, and focus instead on the anachronism element of it. That bit.
Absolutely.
So there is a defence here that says, the days of not being able to get a mortgage, or the days of becoming a chattel upon the point of marriage, those are long behind us. Therefore, this is just a little bit of harmless. Well, yeah, but except that, I think the more I think about the kind of jobs that these men have, and the much, much, much lower representation of women in similar positions, the more I wonder whether this sustains that inequality even in the modern day.
Then you get into a cause and effect. Is it because they are inviting their friends and their friends are in those jobs and therefore they yes. But there's also the fact that I don't think that the reasons that people join are actually because of misogyny. I think it's because it's a prestigious club.
You're the first person to use the word misogyny. I sense, and I don't want to misrepresent you, that you kind of feel that it's okay, but you can't fully articulate why in the context of protecting privilege, which is why the Albright Club actually has been more help to me than to you. Because if you want to see more women on the High Court bench, if you want to see more women editing newspapers, if you want to see more women running MI6, holding down incredibly important jobs, being cabinet secretary or deputy. I mean, you know that there are women. These are not unbreachable bastions, but they're still very, very, very male-weighted. Then a club where all of these men who've already got a much, much higher chance of getting into these kind of positions, can all hang out with each other and women aren't allowed to join, seems to me to be more problematic than it was before you started talking, Sal. But before that, Chris in Nottingham is not furious.
I'm not, James.
Why
I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Why aren't you furious?
Well, probably because my favourite T-shirt used to be one with the Union flag on in 50 Shades of Grey.
I'm looking at Boris Johnson, which no one should have to do, really, without being paid, and thankfully I am, and his leadership election campaign from 2019 when the Union flag was turned blue. The whole Union flag, not only was it blue, they cropped it into the shape of an oak tree.
Yeah, I think... for me, this is not about the flag.
It's not really good enough. It's this widespread fury last night.
Not here in Nottingham, not where I'm sat.
Right,
what I am annoyed about, though, is that it represents to me the thing that really winds me up is arrogance, and this is reflected in the way our politicians behave and get away with it, and then a big corporation can just change the flag and get away with it.
Probably on the wrong show. If you've got a problem with arrogance, you may have accidentally rung the wrong presenter. But it's not, mate. The FA sign off on this. They want the kit designers to come up with twists and changes and playful new.
Lovely.
So how is it arrogant? How is it arrogant?
Well, I think because the Union flag should be left alone.
It's not the Union flag.
And the cross of St George should be left alone. That should be left there.
But we turned it blue for the Olympics.
Yeah.
I bet you didn't even notice. Be honest with me.
I didn't. No, you're absolutely right.
So you're not even mildly annoyed about this. You just read the story, felt some anger and thought, James has made me feel a little bit silly. I better come up with something that sounds vaguely plausible.
No, not even angry at all. I just, as I say, I think
why have you rung me?
Because I think this is another instance of people just doing whatever the hell they like and getting away with it, and we should be getting annoyed about that.
Okay.
It's not about the flag at all.
But you're not annoyed. We should be getting annoyed about it, but you're not annoyed.
I can get monkeys. I don't like football anyway.
Right. Claire's in. These are the people that the Daily Mail and the Sun is riling up today. Claire's in York. Claire, what are you mildly cross about?
Please don't put me in with the Daily Mail. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool lefty. I'm not a right-wing gammon or anything, but I just think I think Emily Thornberry said it right. I think it's weird. But now you've said about the Olympics, I was unwell when the Olympics was on.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And I wasn't aware of what was happening then, so I didn't know about the flag. I just think it's weird when a country's in a competition are represented by their flag.
Well, they're not really. They're represented by the players.
No, but to denote
they haven't dyed Harry Kane purple.
No, but they denote. They're denoted by their flag.
Not in the case of football. It'd be the three lions on the front of the shirt that are the team badges.
But it's England playing another, whatever other country.
Are you worrying about people who might forget who they're watching?
Well, for me, who doesn't know who's who in football,
Okay, so you and Chris, I knew this wasn't a phone-in. I've lost my skills at finding the truly furious people. You're mildly annoyed about something you don't understand involving a sport you don't follow.
Yes.
Well, down with that sort of thing, Claire.
No, but can I just say...
no. Oh, go on then. But if I say no, will you go away furious at least? That arrogant so-and-so on the radio, I rang him in, he was rude to me, he talked all over me, and then he wouldn't let me have my say. I'm furious. So if I can't get people who are furious to ring in, maybe I can get people who are furious to ring off.
Well, all I wanted to say was about patriotism. Sometimes I get annoyed that people on the left seem to scoff at patriotism. And
you're talking about people, though. People on the left think we should care about people, not about flags.
Yes, but...
So patriotism is about caring for your countrymen and women. Yeah. It's about caring for people who are poor. It's about caring for people who are victimised and vulnerable and not being looked after. And that's what people on the left try to do, Claire. People on the right try to pretend we should care about flags and slogans and ludicrous, meaningless notions like sovereignty. I think, with respect, you might have got things the wrong way round.
No, I absolutely care about all those things. So all I was saying, that I was going to say, your callers prove I'm patriotic, not because of the government, but because of those people, the kinds of people that call into your show.
Well, they're most... Anyway, I've got to crack on. I'm sorry you weren't furious. I hope you are now. Ian's in Burton-on-Trent. Ian, what is the thing you feel people might be most reluctant to publicly air?
Well, you've just syncopated exactly what I was thinking.
Go on.
The monarchy.
Oh.
The monarchy.
Really?
I'm sick and... Oh, yeah. You're coming from the left-wing press. The monarchy. It's disgusting. You've got primogeniture laws going on where 7 million are on a waiting list. For God's sake.
The waiting list for what? NHS treatment?
Yeah, for the NHS. When my wife was saying, last week we had a report, 25 minutes on Good Morning Britain, about middle-aged woman diagnosed with cancer.
Well, there's no need. There's no. I mean, I wouldn't want to make light of that in any case, in any family of any woman. Well, you are in a way. I mean, admittedly, most middle-aged women wouldn't get 25 minutes on Good Morning Britain, but it's a sad and that's tail wagging dog though. That's because people are interested in it, and it's commercial television, Ian. It's a commercial decision.
Oh, rubbish. You presume that people are interested. When is the last time people were being asked?
Well, they're asked every day because there's a switch. They're asked every day. They're asked every day. There's a switch on their televisions.
Oh, right. Okay. Is that all we've got as a channel for our democracy?
No. We've got elections for democracy. We've got television switches for deciding what we do and don't want to watch on television.
What are your thoughts as a democratist about primogeniture?
My first thought is I'm not sure democratist is a word.
All right, as an advocate of democracy, then.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about primogeniture?
You mean the firstborn inheriting an estate
towards a bloodline?
As opposed to the French model where they shared everything among all their children and, as a consequence, don't have quite the same aristocratic framework that we have in this country. I think you can leave your money to whichever child you want.
No, but I want an elected head of state.
But that's got nothing to do with primogeniture.
Sorry?
That's got nothing to do...
It's based on the bloodline.
Oh, no, talk about a hereditary monarchy, I think, would be more helpful.
All right, let's talk about a hereditary monarchy.
Yeah, I think it's very silly.
Based on the bloodline.
I think it's very silly, but I think it's like trying to get the eggs out of a baked cake. And I think that the abolition of it, certainly in the short term, would probably cause more harm than good. And it would upset many, many, many more people than it would please. So if we had a referendum on it, would you be happy?
Oh, of course I would.
Yeah.
At least the public would doff our caps. At least the public would be asked.
See, I think you'd lose by a country mile.
Oh, I don't think so. Do you want me to tell you why you think that?
Yeah.
Because you went to a private school
right.
and you benefit from the elitism in our society.
Yes.
Do you want me to tell you why I think that? You do.
Well, it's true. I did go to a private school and I do benefit. I talk about it all the time.
You're part of the organic state that presumes that everybody else is happy with the organic state.
No, I'm not. I just look at the polling on the royal family, mate. Let's not get carried away. And it's completely contrary to what you think it is.
Really? Well,
yes. And let me tell you why, actually, Ian. Drawing upon the benefits of a classical education, let me tell you why. Yeah. The deference you refer to correctly and rightly describe as cap doffing is an incredibly intoxicating drug, mate. So loads of people. Do you think the people lining the Mall with their little nylon flags all went to schools like mine?
I think nationalism is a last
Answer the question. I insist. That you answer the question. Do you think all the little old ladies knitting get-well-soon blankets for Kate at the moment, do you think they all went to public school? And
I don't.
Do you think they all benefit from elitism?
No, I don't.
Do you think they're all on the right side of epic inequality?
No, it's the opium of the masses.
Well, there you go then. So that's why you'd lose a referendum.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
You're a big advocate of the opium of the masses, so we can delude people into thinking that...
No, I'm not. I'm a daily antidote to the opiate of the masses, mate. I'm like anti-opiate.
Do you want a republic, then?
I think a republic is a much, much healthier way to order a society, yes.
Well, come out and say it, then.
Well, I just told you, if you want to have a referendum on it, I'd probably vote against the monarchy, but we'd lose.
So... Are you happy with this?
What is this? I'm the blooming inquisitor. It's not the Ian in Burton-on-Trent show. It's the James O'Brien experience. Right. I've provided answers to your questions that you weren't expecting, and now you don't know what to do.
No, I do know what to do.
Go on, then. Do it.
You're happy, as Keir Starmer is, with the top 7% benefiting from the sovereign grant, while the elite, the monarchy, that is, benefiting from 78 million a year just on the basis of a bloodline.
No, I've just said I'm not, haven't I?
Well, okay, so let's change our society.
Well, okay, but if you want to do it democratically, you'd have to have a vote, Ian, and you'd lose it at the moment precisely because of the opiate of the masses that you so accurately describe. I think next time you're ringing, you should make some notes. Steve is in Barnham in Yorkshire. Steve, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I'm slightly seething at your last caller saying that farmers got loads of subsidies and everything.
Well, some did.
Well, no. Generally speaking, everybody got a percentage got a payment per acre. But if you look at it in real terms, we now pay 7% to 8% of our income in food for this country, when in the 60s and 70s it was 35%. And if you go back even further, it would be 60-odd%.
These are two things can be true at the same time. The Common Agricultural Policy saw subsidies for farmers, and at the same time that's been taken away, at a period for farmers where supermarkets have been scalping them.
No, James. No, James, you've got to stop there.
Okay.
They haven't been taken away. We're in demographics of Scotland. They have their own way of sorting it out. Wales has its own way.
No, the Common Agricultural Policy no longer applies to the United Kingdom. And one of the key complaints of the farmers last night was that they weren't getting as much as they used to get, and what they were getting was coming late. Those are direct consequences of leaving the Common Agricultural Policy, which was a direct consequence of being in the European Union.
We haven't, James. You're misunderstanding. I can't say everything, James.
No, that's all right. Go on, finish.
Because our subsidy has been phased out, but they're now phasing in. It's called an FSI, which is an environmental situation, and we are able to get. Some people can get as much as the old subsidy. Some probably get half as much.
Yes. Well, I understand it perfectly.
But the stamp has now come down just the other day. Yesterday, I believe, where they want people to take out of production no more than 25%. So they're going to pay people to put wildflowers and legumes in and all that situation. Now, what farmers voted leave for, really, was they wanted rid of the red tape.
What red tape?
I voted remain.
What red tape?
Red tractor was one of them, red tractor, but it was an English invention. We have our own situation. We started ourselves. The NFU started it. Minette Batters started it, and it started to take over.
Listen, you're suggesting, and you speak about your Brexit voting colleagues. You don't speak as one of them, but they thought that things they found cumbersome had been imposed upon them by European Union membership when they hadn't actually been.
No, it wasn't European. It was our own.
No, you've got to let me finish. You keep interrupting me and telling me I don't understand things. And if I get to the end of the sentence, you'll realise that I do. So the red tractor was not imposed upon them by the European Union, but they thought it was, and they voted to get rid of it.
There is some stupidity there, James.
That's what you're describing. I'm just checking that I'm understanding you correctly.
No, that's
Steve.
Okay. I tried to tell people.
Right.
They said the government said they'll look after us, and I said no, they won't. Just the same as your last remaining farmer said. Yeah. I said no, they won't look after us. But in reality, James, there's 2.9 billion going to farming, and and now it's called the environment. So we're supposedly still to get the same amount as we got when we were in when it was the CAP. But it's in a different form.
And it doesn't. And you're not addressing the trade deals that farmers last night claimed allowed food produced to standards that are illegal in the UK to be imported into.
Well, we don't exactly have too many trade deals going on at the moment because they haven't really started yet. What their problem is red tractor again, where everything we sell has to be red tractored, monitored. We pay for it to be red tractored, assured, and it goes into the mills. Now then, that mill will have a pile of oilseed rape, wheat, whatever, but it will come in from other countries, and it hasn't been red tractored, and it's called gatekeepered.
It was held to lower standards, but that wasn't true. But that wasn't true before.
To a degree, it had to have been.
I mean, in a way, you're saying that the farmers who were protesting last night didn't really know what they were protesting about.
No, they're protesting about because we've left the union now.
Yes,
we've got to fight for ourselves. And the red tractor is in. And the red tractor.
But the organiser of the entire event said that we need to realign with EU regulations immediately. That's what the protest was about, Steve.
That means we don't have imports from other countries. But where do you get? But James,
produced to lower standards, and we can't gloss over this. I speak to her on a regular basis. The main reason for the protest was to realign with EU regulations.
Don't understand that whatsoever, James.
Well, I'll explain it to you if you'd let me. It would mean that the countries with which Liz trade would mean that, well, you know how much beef has been exported to Australia since we signed that trade deal, right? How much British beef?
Yeah, peanuts, I presume.
How much?
Peanuts, I presume.
No, not that much, Steve. Not that much.
That's nothing.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. And the beef coming in the other direction is already flowing and rising. And it is, according to some analyses, it is going to be farmed under standards that you wouldn't be allowed to farm beef here. So that is and Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, who I presume you voted for. Boris Johnson, did you?
No, I did not vote for them.
But I presume your mates did. All I get is the farmers, the exceptions to the rule. I never get the rules ringing in anymore. I need the rules.
I don't know too many who voted for it, James.
They had the president of the NFU on the programme saying the whole future of British farming depends on Boris Johnson keeping his word, and that's the risk that she took. And here we are now.
That was the imports. But can I just say one thing?
Of course you can.
Soybean, Jim. We don't grow soybean in Europe. We don't grow it. It's in South America and America, isn't it? Soybean.
I don't know.
And probably in Australia. Yes.
I presume so.
But we
yes.
consume large amounts of it. Only 3% is grown for animal produce in the first place.
Yes.
The rest of the animals consume it as a byproduct of humans. So the soybean situation in the world is a misnomer. But
I've never mentioned. Why are you telling me about soybeans?
No, because the trade deals you're trying to imply on me, we had these all before.
No, we didn't. We categorically didn't. I don't think what you've just said about soybeans is true anyway. But the trade deals...
we consume large amounts of soybean in Europe. And in Great Britain.
Listen, soybeans isn't my field of expertise, and it isn't yours either.
No, but that is an import.
Well, it might well be in it, but I'm not talking about blooming soybeans.
No, but they're saying
I'm talking about the trade deal that she signed with Australia, claiming that it was going to change the world, and Kemi Badenoch marching around the country saying that...
It's absolute rubbish.
I know that, and you know that. I know that, and you know that, but all these bloody farmers with the Vote Leave signs in their field don't seem to understand it yet.
Well, I don't really think there's that many that voted Leave.
All right.
Not that many at all.
All right. What do you need most overnight to improve your situation as a farmer in East Yorkshire?
Well, here we go then.
Yeah.
In 1984, James.
No, just give me a short answer, Steve. Honestly, haven't you got cows to milk?
I'm lambing. we need, and the Hoofers.
Yes.
Have stopped the Australians sending ships up the Panama Canal, and they can't get into Europe with the lambs from Australia. So now the price of lamb's gone sky high.
Just answer the question.
What do I need?
Yeah.
I need people to realise they've got to pay more for food.
Well, there it is. So, soybeans come mainly. A lot of soy comes out of Ukraine, apparently.
No, well, most of it's from America. So them saying they want to align with our imports doesn't work because we imported from Australia and America. We imported from America.
All right. Somewhere when people, you can rewind, by the way, on Global Player and listen back to this conversation, and I'm sure elements of it have made sense. You clearly know what you're talking about in some areas, Steve, and with respect, I do too, and in other areas I don't, and in other areas perhaps you don't either. But all of the people, all of the people who voted for Brexit because they thought they were going to get cheaper food, they're the real problem here. Because it couldn't really get any cheaper unless you started allowing stuff that was either undesirable or unsafe to be sold in British shops and supermarkets.
It can't get any cheaper. It cannot get any cheaper because we can't live. The subsidy was there to help us keep supporting. In 1984, wheat was £140
so we're back
a ton,
to the subsidy.
And now it's 170, James. We've had that's it. The subsidy's there to help us keep producing it. It should be £600 a ton.
And that's a conversation that no politician seems prepared to have. I've had a text off Robert, Steve. He says, "You and this farmer make a great double act. Are you busy after lambing?"
Very well, James. Very good, James.
We could go on tour. Gabby's in Barnet. Gabby, what would you like to say?
Hi there. I find it all quite depressing, to be honest with you. I'm not professing to have all of the answers here. What I can't understand is there's been many sort of deals that have been with using the US or Qatar recently, and it's openly been shown that many of them have fallen through due to Hamas. But I think the last one was that Hamas wouldn't even release how many of the hostages were dead. So whether or not, I mean, I'm sure there are other things that need to be taken into account here, but what I can't really understand is why yesterday the Israeli government, if they were actually smart, would just sort of hit pause, embrace the resolution, put a ceasefire on the condition of a full release of hostages, which is, they mentioned the hostages.
No, the UN resolution, the UN resolution doesn't mention the hostages.
Well, then there is a problem there, but essentially placing a burden on Hamas.
Nor does Israel's security minister Itamar Ben-Gvir.
Well, that is a separate point. The point I'm making is if they put the burden on Hamas to acquiesce to the release, which they won't entertain, it seems, and sort of shedding light on Hamas.
They've been doing that from the start. They've been doing that from the start. You can't put the world won't wear that anymore.
They could if they
but they've been doing that from the start. The idea has always been, as soon as Hamas release all the hostages, we'll have a ceasefire. And then Netanyahu resiled from that position and said, even if they do release all the hostages, we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop until we've...
They're not releasing the names of the hostages.
Well, the reports I've read...
Dead and alive.
Well, I don't understand the point that you're making, because you're jumping around quite a lot. Netanyahu has said that even if the hostages are released, we're not stopping.
Well, I think if
you can't just glibly move on now, because that completely.
I think my it's not about moving on from anything. I think my point is about.
Well, it is, because your point is built upon a fundamental misunderstanding of the facts.
Really?
Yes.
There are many of the deals which have fallen through because Hamas won't release information about the hostages. Is that incorrect?
Yes, it is incorrect. One of the accounts of that is that they actually don't know. A lot of the hostages may not even be held by Hamas. And if all of the captives and the hostages have been killed by an attack, who's going to know who's where?
Do you buy that they don't know where any of the hostages are?
No, I buy that they might not know where. I buy that they might not know where some of them are, and I don't understand why we're having this conversation in the context of the broader picture, which is about an Israeli prime minister saying that even if you release all the hostages, we're not stopping.
My point was actually agreeing with you that what they should do is to stop, but they won't stop. So
why won't they stop?
Is painting them in a worse light.
Well, it can't get any worse than this.
I think they've just got themselves now into a situation where it's impossible for them to stop. I don't think they can. I think Netanyahu is such an egocentric maniac at this point. I don't think he can go back on things. So I don't think he is the person who's going to stop. And I know that you said before, well, it will have to be Biden changing or Netanyahu changing for any difference to be made. But I can't see anything changing until Netanyahu's gone. And he has a very low approval rating. I think I read it was under 17%.
When did you reach that conclusion?
Which bit?
About Netanyahu?
Having a low approval rating?
No. Having been embarked upon a sort of almost a narcissistic course of irreversible vanity. I think
very, very early on.
Really?
I think once it became very clear that getting back the hostages was not going to work, hand in hand with defeating Hamas, and it's very clear. I'm not some sort of war expert, but I can't see how the two can work completely together.
No, not me.
But really, they should have changed leadership then and there, but they won't, and they can't now. And I think they can't go. But I wouldn't put too much emphasis on everything Ben Gvir's saying, because it's even in the war cabinet. I don't think he is.
Well, he's the security minister.
I'm not sure he's in the war cabinet, though.
Nor am I. But he is the he is the security minister. So it's a very senior position in the Israeli government.
Changes. No, for sure. And he probably has more haters than lovers. He's unbelievably right wing. And you know how this coalition works. Half of the people that Netanyahu sits with, who allows him to prop himself up, don't share the same beliefs as him, but he has to just go with it. They're dealing with loads of other issues in Israel at the moment, and he has to deal with that as well.
And so I suppose it's the most obvious and in some ways the most depressing answer of all. How does it end? I've got absolutely no idea.
Absolutely no idea.
Same here. Thank you, Gabby. Shane's in Edinburgh. Shane, what would you like to say?
Good morning.
Hello.
As you say, no one knows how this is going to end. It is just totally ghastly, but there's a few things I'd like to say. When that atrocity took place, by Hamas committed that atrocity on the 7th of October, I've never forgotten Netanyahu's words. I accept he was upset, but he said very clearly and unequivocally, they will pay a heavy price. And I froze when I heard it, and I thought, oh my God.
I didn't.
Yeah, no, I did. I thought it filled me with despair, and with what's played out, I was actually dusting my lounge. I was dusting the furniture, and I just froze.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, oh my! Now with what's played out, I don't think the hostages were ever honestly in the contemplation of Netanyahu and the Israeli cabinet. I don't for a second believe that. I just think they wanted to raise Gaza to the ground. And I agree with you, it is impossible to put Hamas out of business. And even the military wing of Hamas, I don't think, can be put out of business. And this
not in this way.
No,
I mean,
not in this way. Exactly.
We put the IRA out of business.
Yes, but you don't put Hamas out of business just by saying there's this network of tunnels all over Gaza and we're going to bomb it to smithereens. But now that America has taken the stance that it has, and that Israel is now isolated politically on this, I think it's about time we had an honest debate about American aid going to Israel, and basically the United States bankrolls Israel. We need to look at a totally different solution in the Middle East. And I am not an anti-Semite, and I take great exception to Dame Maureen Lipman because I'm sympathetic to the Palestinian plight, suggesting
she's not here. So
no, she's not. But she has.
I'm not across what her comments may be, so I'm not really qualified to adjudicate on this. But
I can tell you she said on Sky News last Sunday.
Yeah, but now I have to take your word for what somebody else said that I didn't hear and don't know about. And also, why do we have to bring that into this?
I'm trying to bring into the fact that as soon as someone takes a view, and I'm not anti-Semitic, my late partner had a Jewish heritage, for God's sake.
But what is it that you're saying that you think might... Because I don't need any lessons on being called anti-Semitic for expressing an opinion on the Middle East. Stop talking for a second. Tell me what it is that you want to say that you worry will see you being accused of anti-Semitism, because otherwise this is a pointless conversation.
As soon as for some people in this debate...
I'll ask you again. What is the thing you want to say that you think will see you get called anti-Semitic?
I don't want to say anything that will get me called anti-Semitic, but there is a school of thought that some people...
I'm going to blow the whistle on you in a minute. So what is the thing that you are qualifying by saying I'm not anti... I don't know what the opinion is that you're sharing, Shane.
Well, if you'd let me develop it, I can answer the question.
Just tell me what it is.
Dame Maureen Lipman asserts that if you disagree with Israel, you are anti-Semitic.
See, I don't know that that's true, and I'm not at the moment prepared to take your word for it, which is why I was trying to steer you into a slightly more pertinent or plausible area of conversation.
Because a lot of your callers...
But I don't know that it's true, do I? So
when your callers ring up, James, a lot of them suggest that to disagree with Israel over this is anti-Semitic, and
I've never heard that.
Oh, I've heard it frequently on LBC.
Not on this show, you haven't.
May not, perhaps.
Because they get even shorter shrift than you're getting now, mate. So the conversation that I didn't hear, and now conversations that I wasn't part of. And you've used up 4 minutes of my show at the end of an incredibly difficult conversation that was going, I felt, extremely well. David is in Guildford. David, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James. Yeah, nice little link with that previous point and the message you just said about words alone are not important. I've
only got a couple of minutes, David, just to warn you.
I'm a little bit infuriated about the idea that if you don't apologise for racism, you're racist. And slavery was abhorrent. It's a stain on anybody that was involved. Surely the greatest thing from here that we could take from this is to learn from it, to understand it, to accept that it was a brutal thing to have done and it never happen again. What benefit is an apology from Rishi Sunak or Kate Middleton?
You've just had an hour of people telling you. What did you hear that you disagree with?
Well, I took exception to... I am not a racist person.
That's what racists always say.
Well, yeah.
So it's a simple question. You've just heard an hour of people answering your question completely directly. What did you hear that you disagreed with or struggled with?
I heard the dislocation. I heard the...
so what did you struggle with that you heard? What did you disagree with?
What difference is somebody who wasn't involved...
But they've told you. It's institutional.
Well, is the government institutionally racist? Is the royal family institutionally racist? Is Unilever institutionally racist?
The benefits that they enjoy today are a consequence of the institutionally racist practice of slavery. I don't want to be rude, but if you haven't understood this by now, I don't think I've got the skill.
That is rude, James.
No, you can't say it's rude until I've finished.
Well, you don't want to be rude, but if I don't understand...
By now, I don't think there's anything I can say that will help.
Well, fair enough. Okay.
because you've chosen not to understand. But one thing we can both...
I've not chosen not to...
You have, because you've just heard an hour of explanation and you've chosen not to understand any of it. But we can agree on one thing. We can agree on one thing, can't we?
Well, we can agree that it's abhorrent.
You're definitely not racist.
James, well, you try and paint me as I am, but...
Mate, I'm just repeating your own words back to you and agreeing with you completely. You've listened to this hour of radio where black people have explained the resonance and importance of slavery and the value of acknowledgement and apology in the 21st century for things that happened in the 16th, 17th and 18th, and you don't see the point of it. So I can't help you understand. I can't help you understand any more than they can, but we can at least all agree that you're definitely not racist. Michael is in Tel Aviv, in Israel. Michael, what made you pick up the phone?
Oh, good morning, James. Long time no speak. So I think there is this perception that, so I'm not an Israeli citizen, but I'm obviously seeing a lot of people around and speak to a lot of people, as well as a lot of sort of foreign visitors and that sort of thing. There is a perception that Israel doesn't care about what's happening. And this isn't my experience sort of on the ground, if you like. People do care very much. And if even if you take the number of Palestinians killed, and if you cynically say, well, half of them were terrorists and half of them were inflated, even if it's just 5,000 people.
Yeah, just for the record, I know you know this, but I completely reject that analysis personally. The IDF claims that this percentage were terrorists, but I know what you're saying. We're not disagreeing with each other. Carry on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just saying, even if it was 5,000, it is an absolute tragedy. One person, if it was your relative, would be a tragedy. So no one, and everyone hates that. And so when you had a caller just a couple of calls ago who was comparing the sort of the number of people killed on 7th October, and of course there have been soldiers and people killed since in Israel, and that comparing it to the number of people killed in Gaza, it's not really like for like. There is a big difference between, it is collateral damage. There is no evidence that Israel wants to kill civilians, and it is seen by every Israeli I've spoken to and foreigner in the country as a tragedy. And what we don't know
can't let that pass, Michael.
Go on.
You can't kill tens of thousands. Half of them are children, mate. You can't claim that was all accidental.
I haven't seen evidence that there wouldn't be, but it has to be.
How about ordnance that is launched without any particular concern for who and where it's going to impact? Stuff that is not targeted. I think the word is dummy bombs, and the last statistic I saw was about 40 or 50% of the ordnance used in the earliest days of the conflict were dummy bombs, which you have no control over who they kill.
Well, I think that's true, but I think it's part of a strategy. I think if there was a clinical way to remove Hamas, which everyone in Israel wants to do and agrees is their choice.
There isn't a clinical way, and there isn't an unclinical way either.
But that's why it's collateral damage.
I just hate that phrase. Collateral damage is like friendly fire, isn't it? What about the aid workers? Three separate drones targeting very deliberate vehicles, one of which contained people who'd got out of the last one and survived and clambered into the new one, and then they blew that one up as well. Is that collateral damage?
It's not.
So what's the difference
went very wrong. Well, in the case of the aid workers, it was clearly going to always look so bad that I can't believe there would be any strategy in doing it.
So here's a building full of people that might contain an enemy. We'll blow it up. Here's a car full of people that might contain an enemy. We'll blow that up. One's collateral damage and one isn't. How come? Explain that to me.
Well, one is accidental, and the other one, I don't know what the explanation is, but presumably there was a assumed target in the building, and ugly though it may be.
I've read reports that there was an assumed target in one of the aid cars. Haaretz has reported they believe there was. I don't think it's necessarily true, but that you can claim we thought there was a Hamas fighter in the car. It's a rationale that's given up for blowing up ambulances, isn't it? That Hamas used. No, this is important. Because you can't use the word collateral damage like that. Unless you can explain to me the difference between blowing up a building full of people because it might have a terrorist in it and blowing up a car full of aid workers because it might have a terrorist in it. Either they're both collateral damage or neither of them are.
Well, the government would be the Israeli government would be the first to claim that there was an assumed threat in those aid cars, and even they haven't said that. So that clears to be some kind of complete, whether it's a rogue operative, a complete, there is an inquiry.
You can't call it collateral damage, mate. There's 9,000 dead children. It's a deliberate killing. of 30,000 Palestinian people in the hope of catching some terrorists in that net. That's not collateral damage.
True. James, you're not providing any logic for that. It's not deliberate.
I'm giving you the number. So who fired guns by accident? Who launched missiles by accident? What's the opposite of accident?
I don't understand.
The opposite of accident is deliberate. So either these missiles were fired by accident or they were fired deliberately. If they were fired deliberately in the full knowledge that countless civilians were going to be killed in the process, the killing of the civilians is deliberate.
I wouldn't agree that.
Talk me through the reasons why. Talk me through what the problems in the logic.
Well, for the same reason that if I decide to paint my bedroom with red paint and spill it on the floor, I spilt it. My intention wasn't to spill it on the floor. It just unfortunately happened as a consequence because I'm klutzy.
I don't know if I can even come down to that level of discourse, but I will, out of respect for you, Michael.
Thank you. I was like it when you dumb it down for me.
Well, I'm not dumbing it down. I'm a little bit disgusted by the analogy because we're talking about dead children and you're comparing them to spilt paint. But I appreciate that I put some pressure on you in the moment to justify what is to me an unjustifiable position.
No, James, that's unfair. There's not an equivalent.
No, mate, you're the one that suggested it.
So but it's an analogy. That's not how analogies work, James. That's not how analogies work.
Let me help you with your analogy. Is it possible, and this is what I mean by being a little reluctant to come down to this level, is it possible to paint a bedroom without spilling any paint?
It depends.
Come on, mate, it's your analogy.
Okay, if there is Lego all over the floor and kids running around with
Is it possible to paint a bed? Well, then you clear the Lego and you tell the kids to stay out of the room and then you go in and paint it. So the decision not to clear the Lego or not to tell the kids to stay out of the room and the subsequent spilling of paint is on the person that decided to undertake the painting. It's not upon the Lego or the children, is it, Michael?
Well, it's not a perfect analogy. I was trying to...
You were defending it 30 seconds ago, so let's ignore that analogy. Let's leave the spilled paint out of it. If you launch a missile knowing that it's going to kill civilians, is the killing of those civilians deliberate or accidental?
It is. It's neither. It's not deliberate. It is a consequence.
Okay, so let me say it again. You deliberately launch a missile knowing that civilians will die. Is the killing of the civilians deliberate?
No, it's a consequence. It's a consequence, but it's not the main.
Is it a deliberate consequence?
A deliberate consequence. It's not the intention.
No, but you know it's going to happen, so it is the intention.
Yes. Well, it's not the intention.
It is the intention. You know it's going to happen.
Well, there's a difference between. That's not what an intention means.
Okay.
If there was another way, they would do it.
Well, we've already been there. If they went after terrorists in Gaza in the same way that they would go after terrorists in Israel, we would know what the other way looked like, wouldn't we?
If the terrorists were hiding in a hospital, what's going to happen? You know, in London, I live near a hospital. If there was a huge terrorist cell in the basement, patients would die.
But the proof of that hasn't even been provided after the hospitals have been destroyed.
Oh, absolutely was. The last 3 days, there have been a lot of footage of what was found in Al-Shifa.
This is footage from the IDF.
Okay.
But so we're back to where we were 2 days ago. So why won't they let international journalists in to check?
Well, because
let me steer you back to the question that we're asking today, which is why is Netanyahu who embarked upon this course even as all of his allies abandon him?
What you mean since 7th of October, this course?
No, I mean essentially since the aid workers were killed deliberately and people like Joe Biden and David Cameron and other previous allies have called upon him to cease fire immediately. Why is he resisting those calls?
Well, I think the ceasefire is a red herring because when people talk about a ceasefire, they talk about Israel ceasefiring.
Yeah, okay. But it's not a red herring, is it? Because it's what Joe Biden has called upon Benjamin Netanyahu to do. That is the question.
Michael, Joe Biden's calling for it because there's an election this year, but he knows it can't work because Hamas are not going to lay down their arms.
So you're answering questions that I'm not asking. Why is Netanyahu continuing on this course despite the fact that all of his international allies have now abandoned him, that his popularity levels in Israel have gone through the floor, that the families of the hostages are among his most vociferous critics, and yet he remains completely committed to the course that you acknowledge, for want of a better word, will accidentally cause the deaths of tens of thousands of more civilians. Why is he embarked upon? Why is he dedicated, committed to this cause?
Well, the course of what he's about, I think partly because he's Netanyahu and his number one motivation is himself. He wants to survive because he knows he's got very limited time. The hostage families.
These people are being killed, they're being sacrificed on the altar of Benjamin Netanyahu's vanity, and you're here to defend it.
No, I think partly right now what he's doing is that there is an existential threat continuously from Hamas. They, crossed a line which he had to react to after 7th of October. Hamas has to be removed in the same way.
You're not answering the question I asked, because the people I'm describing, the allies I'm describing, agreed with that on October the 8th and October the 9th. They don't agree with it now. So that has changed. That rationale has changed. That argument no longer washes. The idea that you're going to eradicate Hamas by creating a new generation of orphans is palpably absurd. Why is Netanyahu still pretending that it isn't? With the support, respectfully, with the support of people like you.
Well, let's not claim I have any support for him at all. I didn't before the 7th of October, and I don't now.
You support the continuing offensive in Gaza?
I support the removal of Hamas. I wouldn't claim to be a military expert to know any better way to do it.
And you believe that it can be achieved by killing more and more and more children?
Hamas will not negotiate nor lay down their arms. We're not dealing with Sinn Féin here.
I'm just clarifying your own position. I'm just clarifying your own position. You want to bring Sinn Féin into it? You'd have to explain to me why the British government didn't go into Catholic areas of Belfast and kill everybody in the hope of catching some terrorists. So why is Netanyahu still on this course, despite the fact that everybody who previously supported him has abandoned him?
Because Hamas need to be removed, and the only way to remove them is to do it physically.
Right. How's that working out for you?
Well, it's an absolute tragedy for everyone.
No, I mean, how's it going? How's it going? How do you feel looking at the world now in terms of whether Hamas is in a weaker or stronger position for the next generation, whether enemies of Israel are being strengthened or weakened by Netanyahu's actions at the moment? Simple question.
I think clearly international relations are under strain, but that's because of in each country...
enemies of Israel being strengthened or weakened by Benjamin Netanyahu's actions?
The enemies of Israel, that's mostly Iran and a few others. Are they being strengthened? I think that most of the enemies of Israel are enemies of the rest of the world, so it's a transient situation.
Okay, so the people who wish Israel harm, individuals or institutions, countries or civilians, do you think that Benjamin Netanyahu is discouraging them from their hatred of Israel or encouraging more of it?
Well, it's absolutely very useful to them to
Don't spill any paint, eh?
Right. You too. Thank you, James.
Trevor's in Finchley on a better line. Where were we, Trevor?
I start things, James. I agree with your initial comment that what happened yesterday was an absolute calamity. The fact that the aid organisation has given their coordinates to Israel and that they were still killed is indeed a tragedy. The larger issue is that should it affect the war? My own view is that it shouldn't. Israel's in a particular state, a situation where they're confronted by an enemy that to request demands its elimination. They don't want a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution.
Well, Netanyahu and much of his cabinet doesn't want a two-state solution either. So does that justify their elimination from the other side of this argument?
I think you have to look at the history of...
Just answer the question, if you would.
Sorry, what was that?
Just answer. Well, you must know what the question was because you were just about to dismiss it.
I heard repeat the question, James.
Okay, so Benjamin Netanyahu and many members of his cabinet are on the record as opposing a two-state solution now. Does that somehow justify calls for their elimination as well?
The two things don't run together. The fact that they want
yes,
they want
they do. You told me that the justification for the elimination of Hamas, regardless of what the collateral damage to innocent civilians might be, was built upon their refusal to accept a two-state solution.
That's completely absurd.
So
the reason
that's
why
what
there
you
is a
said.
war on.
So I'm wondering whether Benjamin Netanyahu
and
James. I'm repeating your own words back to you.
The reason there's a war. The war is not because they want a one-state solution.
No, but the need to eliminate Hamas is because they reject a two-state solution. You just told me that.
They've launched a genocidal war on Israel. That is the reason there is a war, not because they have a view that they have a one-to-one.
And you've just justified the elimination of everybody in Gaza in pursuit of Hamas.
How do you then convey the idea of wanting to demilitarize Hamas and remove them militarily?
Because you're here to justify the killing of civilians.
Who's justifying the killing of civilians?
Well,
who justifies? Where did I say that, James? Why are you inventing words?
Because you said that you want what's happening now to continue, and tens of thousands of civilians are already dead. Ergo, to call for what is happening now to continue, you're calling for the continuing killing of innocent civilians.
No,
this isn't complicated, Trevor.
Civilians. They are. How many people have been killed in Gaza? 32,000?
That we know about.
So, that we know about. The United Nations number of civilians killed to combatants generally is recorded as 9 to 1. That's the UN figure. The number of civilians, the people who have been killed in total, is about 32,000. If you accept
that we know about.
No, James, if you accept Israel's figures of, say, 13 to 14,000 combatants...
Why would I accept those figures?
2.2. That is well below
Why would I accept those
the United
figures?
Nations have as a figure.
Why would I accept those figures?
Well, you'd rather accept Hamas's figures rather than United Nations figures.
You're talking about Israel's figures.
Hamas's figures are more credible than United Nations.
I think that Human Rights Watch has detailed the measures that the Palestinian Health Authority takes to record casualties and deaths with reference to mortuaries and hospitals, and explained that by publishing biographical details and names, they have a more reliable record than many other comparable conflict zones, whereas you think you should trust what the Israeli Defence Force tells us while refusing to allow foreign journalists into that territory. Just talk me through that.
Well, I'd accept the United Nations... Well, the fact that all these figures are going to have to be verified at some time later.
So why are you telling me to trust one and not... Why are you telling me to trust one and not another then, Trevor?
Because the United Nations... Well, the 32,000 figure comes from Hamas. You're quite prepared to...
It comes from the Palestinian Health Authority, which the Human Rights Watch have provided objective analysis of. Who provides objective analysis of what the Israeli Defence Force tells you?
Or Hamas. So if you're going to
you can't keep doing this. I've told you what Human Rights Watch say about the measures that the Palestinian Health Authority deploy to list their death toll. Who provides objective external scrutiny of the numbers that the Israeli Defence Force provides?
Well, you either accept Israel's...
You're going to have to answer the question at some point. Who provides objective international scrutiny of the numbers that you have come on the show to tell me I should trust?
I would like to suggest to you...
I'm going to ask you again until you answer the question, because we both know the answer. We both know the answer.
No, we don't know the answer. No, we don't, James.
Well, I'll tell you then, Trevor. Nobody.
No, you have. Well, either you accept or not accept that Israel's figures are as close as verifiable as possible. Either you can denounce them because it's Israel.
But I've just told you that Human Rights Watch are the body to whom I turn for guidance on this matter. Who's the body to whom you turn for guidance on whether the IDF's figures are reliable?
Well, the United Nations Human Rights Watch is an organisation that has vilified Israel in the past.
Okay, so they're biased as well.
And so I would.
So then we come back to this question: why won't they allow foreign correspondents into the territory?
I've no idea. You'll have to ask them.
Well, let's think it through together, shall we? Because here we are arguing about the facts.
Why is that important to you? Why is that important to having all
Well, because I believe in objective external scrutiny, and I'm intrigued as to why you think Israel rejects it at every turn.
I think there are more important issues at the moment.
Yeah, but you've rung in to talk about these issues, so you'll indulge me. You'll indulge me then, Trevor. Why would Israel refuse access to foreign journalists when people like you are so keen to have objective facts established by trustworthy outside sources?
Well, there are journalists there. There are Palestinian journalists there. Do you not accept
so we come back to the question. No, you've told me that I can't trust Palestinian figures.
There are journalists there.
Yes, why won't Israel allow foreign correspondents in? Why won't they allow Katya Adler in or Matt Fry? Why won't they allow Christiane Amanpour in? Why won't they allow people that have visited and reported on every other war zone in the world? And you're going to have to answer one of my questions.
My answer to you is, have you posed that question to them? Have you posed that question? Has LBC posed that question? What's the answer they've given?
Pose that question to whom?
Have you posed the question to the Israeli authorities why they won't allow LBC, BBC, Sky, why they won't allow them? Have you posed that question?
I will when I get the opportunity to ask them, but right now I'm asking.
Sure it's been posed.
Right now I'm asking you.
Well, I think
and you're the answer to the question, Trevor. This is what you don't realise.
See,
you are the answer to the question, because if they allowed foreign correspondents in to provide independent verification, to provide international scrutiny, to report objectively, you wouldn't be able to ring this programme and say the things that you've just said.
James, do you know what if there were journalists involved with, what they would find is that arms in maternity wards,
you see?
Guns in pillowcases.
Yes, so then why wouldn't they let you? You've done it. You've proved my point even more powerfully. So everything, all of the journalists would discover things that completely support your position. So you must be furious that they're not allowed in.
No, because I trust the Israeli military authorities to make judgments that are right.
They've just killed three British aid workers. The people you trust to make judgments have just killed 3 British aid workers. Before you go, you remember when they shot 3 hostages who were wearing their underpants?
The Israeli hostages?
Yeah, the ones waving the white flags, wearing their underpants, who'd escaped. How's that? What's the latest on that investigation? From the people that you trust.
James, we're in the middle of a war. The fact that every single awful incident, like yesterday...
Are you going to answer one question that I've asked you, Trevor?
I've no idea if I'm sure...
These are the people that you trust. I'm looking for the grounds. What's the latest on that investigation? Because you're trusting them to conduct this investigation. What's the latest on the shooting of 3 Israeli hostages by the Israeli Defence Force, wearing their underpants and waving white flags? The hostages that we're told and you believe that countless civilians have to die to secure the release of.
Why do you put words in people's... Where has anyone mentioned you're so polluted by your own and corrupted by your own language?
Here we
go.
You put
words into my mouth that I never said.
You said that the war has to continue.
The war absolutely continue because they're...
And how many civilians have died so far? So that means the killing of civilians has to continue. I can't explain your own thoughts to you, Trevor. You have to take responsibility at least for them.
And I'm very happy to do that. But
except you're not, are you? Because you don't want independent journalists in the region. You don't want anybody to believe the figures that are provided by anybody other than the Israeli Defence Force, who you claim you trust completely, while you can't even tell me the state of the investigation into their shooting of the hostages that you claim the release of is the justification for the entire conflict in Gaza in the first place.
Why does the UK government support Israel in its war aims? Why do they
do
that,
say
James?
that again?
Why did your government support Israel in its war aims at the moment? Why do they do that, James?
That's a brilliant question.
What do you think, James? Give me your own independent objective view of why England, the British government, is supporting Israel in its aims of destroying Hamas. Why do you think that is?
Well, they're not, are they?
No,
they're not supporting. They've called. They have absolutely laid down a red line on Rafah. They've made it absolutely clear that they don't support war crimes. They've made it absolutely clear that they don't support a ground offensive. That they don't support a ground offensive in Rafah, and they've made it absolutely clear that the unnecessary killing of civilians is something that can't be countenanced. Israel riding roughshod over all of that, absolutely. Again, you make a brilliant point. Benjamin Netanyahu has made the British government look both ridiculous and weak.
I think the British government has
Hang on,
strong.
You're asking me what I thought.
Okay.
So I'm answering your question. Benjamin Netanyahu has made the British government look ridiculous and weak, just as he has made you look ridiculous and weak.
Well,
profoundly wrong.
Personal, wish you reject my view.
But hang on, you just talked to me about pollution. You got personal first, Trevor. I'm only meeting you on your own battlefield.
No, I haven't. I haven't defamed your opinion or anything like that. But the British government.
So we'll return to what to me is the killer question, the most crucial question of all.
What is that?
And that is, why won't they let journalists in?
Perhaps it's too dangerous to have
the journalists. The journalists make that decision.
Journalists made that decision. No, but it's for the military authority to decide whether it's prudent, given their military operations.
And then 2 minutes ago, you were reminding me that there are Palestinian journalists there.
Yes, there are.
Yeah, so why won't they let foreign correspondents who are absolutely chomping at the bit to get into Gaza?
Well, I don't know. I don't understand.
You're not going to answer it. You know that. I know that.
No.
We know what the answer is. We know that it's because Israel cannot countenance what would actually be reported.
What, hiding arms in maternity wards?
No, because they can't let journalists in, because if they did, you wouldn't be able to come on the radio and tell lies like that.
A lie of finding arms and finding munitions in a maternity ward, is that a lie?
Well, you tell me. You tell me the journalists that have reported that.
No, you've just bold-faced said it was a lie. So obviously you have evidence.
You tell me the journalists that have. You tell me the journalists that have reported that. You tell me the journalists that have reported that, or have you taken that from the same people that killed the 3 British aid workers yesterday?
I take that from the video evidence of the army who have gone in.
Say that again more slowly. The video evidence that who?
the video evidence from the Israeli army, from lady soldiers.
So there we are. And that's the answer to your question. They can't let journalists in because then people like you wouldn't be able to take videos filmed by the actual soldiers killing the civilians as truth, would you?
Well, from your position, James, anything Israel says is obviously always going to be wrong.
Which is why you need independent journalists in there. Which is why you need independent journalists in there, Trevor. You see it now, finally.
So you're accepting Hamas's figure, which you're saying...
No, I'm accepting a Human Rights Watch's analysis of how the Palestinian Health Authority assembles its figures. No, and you are reminding everybody listening why journalists aren't allowed in by Israel. Because you wouldn't then be required to rely on footage filmed by the actual soldiers killing the actual civilians, Trevor. But here you are, live on the radio, saying it out loud.
James, you're very good at contorting, distorting.
I'm not, Trevor. I'm very good at holding up mirrors and repeating people's words back to them.
You're an excellent journalist, but you use it to create...
I'm very good at repeating people's words back to them. Without you, Trevor, I'm nothing. Martin is in Tewkesbury. Martin, what would you like to say?
I'm horrified by the discussions because I think of naivety is absolutely shocking. I mean, the previous guy, the IT guy, I mean, the level of intrusion and lack of privacy for his son, I think, is absolutely appalling.
For his 12-year-old son?
And all the... Well, I mean, what you should... I mean, the only way to protect your children is through education and transparency and openness with them, so they trust you. And the fact is that trying to control access or monitor access, I mean, I think is deeply dangerous. I mean, I think moving on to the sort of technical side of it, I'm not sure anyone yet has mentioned the acronym VPN, Virtual Private Networks. So the fact is that...
Well, no, but we've acknowledged, I mean, literally in the moments before you came on air, we acknowledged the existence of technological loopholes which would allow people to bypass whatever prohibitions were put in place. But let's back up a little bit. The simple question of keeping an eye on what children are doing and not allowing them complete freedom to do stuff. That sounds a bit strange.
I don't think you can.
Well, then why is it illegal for them to buy cigarettes? Why is it illegal for them to buy cigarettes and alcohol then?
I think that's a separate issue.
Well, you have to say that now, but you need to answer the question: why is it illegal for them to do it, and why is it monitored?
Well, they're physical things, aren't they? I think the point about access to information.
A phone's a physical thing.
A phone.
So why is it different? But why is it different? And we could just educate them instead. It could still be legal. It's all about educating them, isn't it? We don't need to have laws in place. We don't have to infringe their privacy or their freedom. They could free to buy alcohol and cigarettes, but hopefully, we'll just educate them not to. What's the difference?
Well, I think the point is there is no point putting in place laws which is designed to which stand no chance of success. So,
but they'd stand huge chances of success.
Well, if you believe that stopping people buying phones, or children buying phones.
No, I don't think that would work. I don't think that would work. I think banning under 16-year-olds from social media in the same way that under 18-year-olds can't get onto gambling websites would be a good idea.
Can't do that, can you? Because all someone has to do is use a VPN. My boys were using VPNs from 11 or 12, and immediately you circumvent whatever UK laws are in place.
The technology's already caught up with that. Netflix can spot VPNs.
Well, it can maybe spot them, but what it does...
Close them down. Close down the account that's been set up on a VPN. Netflix can already do it. And and I know that this is simply the case of occasionally the loophole gets out there before the people who've got the biggest budgets in the world have caught up with it, but they close it down incredibly quickly. Why do films have age ratings, do you think?
But VPNs are not a loophole, are they? They're fundamental to daily life. When you access your banking account, doing it through secure means.
Yes, but if you're misrepresenting yourself to a provider of a service online, they can put measures in place to prevent you from doing so. So gambling. Let's talk about gambling websites. How do they work? How do you manage to stop 18-year-olds from getting on a gambling website?
Well, but there you have to pay for something, don't you? So what you have is authentication.
No, you don't. You don't have to pay for something. You open the account before you put any money in it, obviously.
But you can't gamble, though, can you? Even if you can open an account.
Of course you can.
And the point is that
you can nick your dad's credit card.
How can you gamble if you have... Well, okay, but that applies to anything else as well, doesn't it?
A few texts here saying this caller doesn't understand what a VPN is.
I certainly do understand what a VPN is, and VPNs are either free or chargeable. The point is you can represent yourself as being...
Richard says, go on, ask him. You voted
10 or 20 countries.
You voted Brexit, didn't you? That's very unfair. But why can't we do on social media? Why can't we do on social media companies what we do on gambling companies? Just in a sentence.
I'm an absolute Remain.
Just answer the bloody question. Why can't we do on Facebook what we do on gambling companies?
Because it won't work. It cannot.
But it works on gambling companies.
But all the privacy campaigners are against this, aren't they?
What do you mean all the privacy campaigns are against it?
If you look at the online safety bill, all the things that flow from that, all the privacy campaigns are against it.
You've lost me. I don't know what you're talking about, which is not... I'm sure that's my fault.
In relation to authentication, and...
Who are the privacy... When you say all the privacy campaigners, who do you mean?
I'm sorry. Alec Muffet is one. Again, sorry.
Who are you talking about? Anyway, maybe you're right. Maybe you've got a more powerful point than I've managed to appreciate. In which case, I apologise. And I do want people. And now I've just monstered old Martin when he's rung in to offer up an alternative view. So now nobody else will, and you'll accuse me of being biased and one-sided, and you might even have a point. But if you can do it if Paddy Power can do it, why can't Facebook? Harry's in Ealing. Harry, steer us back to a sensible conversation, please, and leave your hourly pay rate out of it.
I don't think my hourly pay rate is even near to yours. Obviously, I was listening to one of your last callers. I think it was Colin.
Yeah.
I think it was before. He made sense. Obviously, I do the same thing. I'm 36. I've got a 14-year-old child where I've restricted him on social media. He doesn't have a social media account, doesn't have Instagram, doesn't have Facebook. He has WhatsApp, but it's under monitored, which is on a tablet, which I have access to on my phone, because obviously I use the web version of WhatsApp to see what he's doing if he's messaging random people out the blue. In his school, which is in Acton, which is very well maintained, how they do with mobile phones, they don't allow smart devices.
Well, in the whole, so you can't bring one into school?
You can't bring it into school. Bring it into school, it gets confiscated, and then obviously the parents, obviously myself, will be notified and informed and saying, right, your child has brought in a smart device.
So what do they normally do? Take in a non-smart device, or leave their smart devices at home? What's the general?
Our old generation, how we work it, we bring a brick phone, so otherwise known as a drug dealer phone, should I say? But it's just a standard phone that can text, that can call, and that's about it. That's how it's supposed to be. Now, right now, my kid's at home. It's Easter holidays.
It is.
He's on the PlayStation, but it's monitored, so I have access it onto my phone. So there's a new message, I can see it. If there's anything else, I can see it.
Wow.
This is the first time he's ever had a PlayStation in the last 5 months. He's never had one before. He's never had a console before. So let's just say he's 14 and never had a console until now.
Why?
Because I don't like how social media has been portrayed.
But you can play video games without going on social media. You can play
it. It's non-internet accessible consoles.
Yeah.
So I've given.
So he's had that then. So you mean you've let him online on his games?
Not online.
So until he was 14, he wasn't allowed to play any video games?
He could play video games as a standard basic, so mobile phone games, there's
slight elements of this are part of a different conversation, but and I ask this question in all seriousness, what are you worried about?
Well,
what are you protecting him from?
I have seen this in my workplace.
Yes.
I actually work in the justice system under the YOI, so the Youth Offenders Institute. And I have seen it from age 14 up to 18 who have gone on social media to get zombie knives, easily accessible. And I have seen people...
But there's a million people on social media who've never been anywhere near a zombie knife.
Yeah, but then they've been near enough to a person who has
Does
under sexual context.
Yeah, but again, the massive majority of people on there have. I mean, I've been on it for 20 years. It's never happened to me.
No, but you have to think about it from the old generation to the new generation.
Are you particularly worried about your boy? Do you think he's impressionable?
No, to me, my kid, I always say he's too honest for his own good.
Okay, so you are a little bit worried about his naivety.
Yeah, I believe that one way or another, he's going to be to the point that someone's going to end up giving him something or doing something or asking him something.
I'm so glad I asked that before I went off on one about you. No, because no one. I mean, most of us would attest that no one knows our children as well as I do, and I think my dad would probably have talked about me like you're talking about your boy.
If you don't believe that your kid's going to be naive and not going to believe anything, you're deluded.
Yeah. Well, up to a point. Let's not. I mean, let's sit in judgment on others because I'm encouraging people not to sit in judgment on you. But where does it end, Harry? Where does it end?
It does. The problem is, it will never end.
Well, of course it will. Never. He's going to leave home one day. He's going to get married. You're not going to be there when he's.
Yeah, but then you still got the next generation. But you're only talking about one person out of thousands.
Yeah,
it's going to carry on going. The next generation is going to carry on going. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. Right now, generations are getting much worse from what our generation.
Well, they are, and you're at the forefront of it, given what you do. You work in a youth offenders institution.
For example,
go on.
For example, back in the day when we were kids, if we did something bad, our dad would literally give us the backhand.
Well, that's child abuse, though.
Well, that time it wasn't. It was either you were going to get slapped
I know, but don't spoil it, because we just reached the kind. Well, you are spoiling it a bit. You can't sit here saying back. I mean, are you suggesting that was a good thing?
I'm just saying.
That's just an illustration of how much things have changed.
No, things have changed where there's nothing around for anyone anymore. There is nothing around for the new generation or the now current generation of kids.
Well, not in your son's case, because you don't let him anywhere near it. But everyone else is having the time of their life playing FIFA 24 and various other video games and loads of other technological-based amusements and delights.
But then you're seeing it from another point of view. You're seeing it from that point of view. Okay, right.
No, mate, I'm just counting. You said there's nothing to do, so I just gave you a long list of things that most kids can do, but your kid can't.
Those kids are going outside wearing a hood-rich top.
Right.
Around,
It's all gone a little bit weird now, because I mean, there's plenty of children, not whatever brand it is you just alluded to. There's plenty of children not doing those things and not buying zombie knives and not engaging in inappropriate sexual behaviour online. And there is an element. I'm going to say this to you actually, rather than not offer you the chance to respond. A lot of people listening to this will think you sound very paranoid.
Have you actually seen it from the other side of the
No, you've called other people delusional, so they're calling you paranoid. Of course these risks exist, but you sound paranoid.
No, because I've seen the other side.
I know, but you sound paranoid.
I don't sound paranoid.
No, you do. You do, because I'm telling you what you sound like, because I'm listening. You sound paranoid.
You can class it as paranoia. You can class it as anything like that. But the thing is, I'm overprotective as a child to my child.
Yeah.
And obviously, and when I'm seeing it from the youth offender side, where I see kids who have no clue about why they even had a product or why they've gone on social media to do certain things.
Can't you just educate him?
What part of education system is showing that?
No, you educate him.
But then also, what is showed in a school? Internet safety?
No, you educate him, especially with your professional experience. You literally sit him down and talk him through all the risks that you're just...
I will always do it, but then you've got people who can't do it because they don't know anything about it.
I'm talking about you! Why don't you do it?
Me. I am doing it. That's why my kid doesn't do it.
No, he doesn't do it because he's not allowed. This is one of the most surreal conversations I've ever had at 12:43 on a Wednesday. Your kid's not doing it because he's not allowed to. So there's loads and loads of kids out there not doing it because they don't want to or because they understand the risks. Why is your child...
They don't understand the risk.
Yeah,
they don't understand the risk until they actually see what the risk has happened.
But that's not true, is it? Because the world is full of people that don't do things because they understand the risks.
Is it? Are you sure? Because right now,
yes, I'm positive.
The population of knife crimes are under 40, from 15 to,
and the massive majority of teenagers are not involved in knife crime.
But compared to the massive amount of percentage,
mate, we can't argue about the meaning of the word majority, and we can't argue about the meaning of the word paranoid, and we can't argue about the meaning of the words overprotective, which you're comfortable with, and so we will, I think, leave it at that. But I mean, crikey, just as someone a little bit further down the road of life than you, The kids I was at school with, whose parents didn't let them do anything at all, were the ones that went absolutely crackerjack when they went away to college. And in fact, the kids I was at college with who went absolutely crackerjack were the ones who'd had partly boarding school actually would be some of them, where you couldn't do any of the things that children at normal schools could do. So they'd go off on. So that's all. That's just a little word of observation. And as Tom says, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that they're not out to get you.
The girls, the boys, and the dog.